Haunted by sudden recollections, Lady Lifey struggles to comprehend the memories of a past life flooding her mind. She reflects heavily on the enigmatic and mystical visions that occasionally overtake her sleep. Within those recurring dreams, she desperately questions the identity of the shadowy figure holding her close. A vivid memory flashes of a handsome man and a beautiful woman sharing a tender, romantic embrace among blooming flowers. Her deep reverie shatters when an attendant suddenly announces that her scheduled meeting is approaching. The polite attendant formally guides Lady Lifey, urging her to depart immediately for the royal palace. Arriving at the grand estate, Lifey prays fervently that His Highness Easton will finally awaken from his prolonged slumber. The tragic, fateful events of exactly 1 month prior suddenly echo vividly through her anxious mind. While strolling on a grassy hill, her fiancé Prince Easton suffered a terrible fall and struck his head severely. Ever since that disastrous day, the unconscious prince has remained completely bedridden under the strict care of a magical pharmacist. Lush leaves frame the imposing royal estate as it stands quietly under the bright sunlight. Anticipation peaks on the 10th day, the exact moment the magical potion is meant to reveal its true restorative effects. Startled by an unexpected sound, Lifey peers through a slightly open door as a sudden voice breaks the silence. Her eyes widen in absolute shock as she struggles to process the unbelievable scene unfolding before her. Trembling with utter confusion, she softly calls out her sister Arya's name upon discovering the prince embracing another woman. Arya turns around in evident surprise, nervously acknowledging her older sister's sudden and poorly timed arrival. The newly awakened Easton coldly addresses Lifey, recognizing her only through the stories he has recently been told. Devastated and bewildered, Lifey demands to know exactly why her younger sister is holding the magical medicine. Arya feigns innocence while clinging to the amnesiac prince, claiming she boldly filled in his missing memories out of necessity. Easton glares furiously at Lifey, aggressively accusing her of mistreating his beloved Arya and falsely claiming their engagement. Struck by the sheer absurdity of the twisted accusation, Lifey reels back in horrified, wide-eyed disbelief. The prince fiercely declares his intention to marry his supposed savior, shamelessly crediting Arya for the potion that cured him. Safely hidden behind the prince's protective embrace, Arya flashes a sinister, mocking smirk directly at her older sister. A dark realization washes over Lifey as the devastating truth of her sister's calculated betrayal finally sinks in. Clenching her fists in furious despair, she realizes she has been completely outmaneuvered and robbed of her rightful life. Screaming out in bitter frustration, Lifey loudly laments that she is doomed to charge straight into yet another lonely existence. Slumping over a small table in her massive library, she weeps heavily over the crushing weight of such an intimate betrayal. Tears stream endlessly down her face as she reflects on the agonizing, sudden loss of her friends, her lover, and her family. She bitterly acknowledges the harsh reality that loved ones are never guaranteed to stay by your side permanently. Furious magic erupts around her as she screams about her stolen life, raging despite her earnest efforts to behave and live peacefully. A calm voice suddenly interrupts her raging despair, noting her obvious agitation with an unexpectedly mild tone. Staring blankly ahead near a bubbling aquarium, Lifey recounts how her deceitful younger sister fed vicious lies to the amnesiac prince. She continues detailing the absolute treachery, explaining how she was perfectly framed as the cruel villain of the tragic story. The ultimate insult crashed down when her rightful engagement was abruptly annulled based entirely on those fabricated claims. The young man listens quietly as shimmering magical droplets float peacefully through the air around him. He tilts his head and offers her a gentle, knowing smile, standing as a calm anchor amidst her swirling emotional storm. Shocked by his sudden appearance, she questions Rune, who cheekily explains he brought moisture because she looked ready to burn the mansion down. Flustered, she quickly denies any intention of arson, vehemently insisting she has never even used her latent powers before. Rune gently catches her arm, pointing out the dark, uncontrolled magical burn forming directly on her own hand. He cheerfully begins applying a special ointment he crafted himself, smiling warmly while Lifey protests wildly. Rune lightly teases her for being easily defeated despite her infamous past title, before sternly warning her about her fluctuating magical control. He firmly advises against fighting back directly, revealing that the treacherous Arya is actually the legendary enchanting saint. Rune explains that enchanting saints possess terrifying manipulative abilities and have historically been known as nation-ruining beauties. He then mentions another historical figure who lived 3 centuries ago alongside these saints, the infamous dark sorceress Raleigh. This dreaded sorceress was universally feared as a rare villainess capable of wielding world-destroying magic. Leify calmly confirms that she was that very dark sorceress in her past life, and Rune has been serving her loyally ever since. Rune gently praises her innate kindness, noting that despite her overwhelming power, her deep compassion prevents her from harming her sister. Stepping forward with unwavering loyalty, Rune confidently vows to handle the complicated situation himself this time. Leify bristles indignantly at being underestimated, pointing out that charm magic is completely useless against those with formidable magical strength. Refusing to be left alone again, Leify resolves to fight for her long-held dream of finally finding true friends and a loving partner. Staring her down with cold authority, her father demands that Leify leave the house immediately. She questions if he truly gave permission, but he insists Prince Easton refuses to let Arya near her supposed abuser. Leify fiercely defends her innocence, reminding him that she has proven her worth as a skilled magic apothecary. Her father coldly orders her to prioritize Arya's feelings, acting only to protect the amnesiac prince from confusion. A bitter realization sinks in as she acknowledges that Arya was prioritized while she lost her family, her lover, and her job. Furious, Leify wonders what on earth her deceitful sister is planning by showing up at the engagement party. Embracing her ruined reputation, she boldly contemplates arriving with the Demon King to truly shock everyone as a notorious villainess. Smirking with absolute confidence, Rune reveals he knows someone powerful enough to silence absolutely anyone. He looks out over the estate and asks if he should go ahead and send out the invitations. Stepping into the grand foyer of the royal palace, Leify and Rune prepare to face the high-stakes gathering. A phantom image of Easton and Arya kissing haunts her mind as she cringes at returning to the scene of the betrayal. Rune walks closely beside her, reminding her that it was too dangerous to send her home and confirming she hasn't seen Arya since. Leify points out the glaringly suspicious fact that the prince's amnesia only wiped the memories involving the 2 sisters. Despite moving past her romantic feelings, she admits that Arya's refusal to clear the misunderstanding still crushes her deeply. Rune playfully teases her inability to discard harmful people, mentioning a disguised potion meant to weaken a holy maiden's charm. Leify quickly clarifies that the magical tea leaves weren't for Arya, but rather to suppress a dangerous power that could ruin the country. Shifting her focus, Leify turns back to Rune with a sudden, pressing question. She demands to know exactly who received the invitations, pointing out that she is attending completely alone without any replies. Rune feigns innocent surprise at the lack of responses before a sudden sound shifts his attention upward. A regal, commanding man with a flowing cape stands silently at the very top of the grand staircase. Leify stares up in wide-eyed astonishment, completely captivated by the stranger's sudden and imposing arrival. The handsome nobleman returns her gaze, his piercing eyes locking onto hers with intense focus. Clutching her chest in sheer shock, Leify feels her heart race as the magnetic stranger commands the room. As his dark boots step down the stairs, Leify lets out a soft, confused gasp. She frantically searches her mind, desperately wondering why this powerful figure is approaching her now. Pausing before her, the man formally and smoothly introduces himself as Oliver Luke Shinwood. Struck by the immense weight of the name, Leify breathlessly repeats his prestigious title. Oliver politely requests her silence, revealing that his bloodline is subtly connected to the royal Shinwood family. Regaining her composure, she gently takes his gloved hand and formally introduces herself as Leify Quinn Tarlant. Oliver flashes a stunning, radiant smile that instantly warms the tension in the grand hall. A flush of embarrassment hits Leify as she realizes he is still firmly holding her hand. Oliver casually reveals that he is the one who sent the invitation, confirming his identity as Rune's mysterious contact. Suddenly losing her footing on the treacherous grand staircase, Leify slips and cries out in absolute terror. Bracing for a brutal impact, she desperately prepares to unleash her magic to catch herself. Panic rips through her as she screams for a moment to save herself from the dizzying fall. In a flash of movement, Oliver catches her securely against his chest and murmurs about the close call. Holding her safely in his strong embrace, he gazes down with genuine concern to ask if she is hurt. Flushed red and trembling from the shock, Leify stammers out a frantic, embarrassed apology. Catching her entirely off guard, Oliver suddenly leans his face incredibly close to hers. Lifey gasps in breathless astonishment as he delicately touches the necklace resting against her chest. Blinking in sheer confusion, she stutters out a bewildered response to his unexpected proximity. Stepping back, Oliver immediately offers a sincere apology for his terribly rude behavior. He explains that he moved closely to ensure she wouldn't fall again, while she quickly insists she is quite alright. Looking at his regal posture, Lifey instantly remembers Rune's promise about a man who could silence anyone. Completely speechless, she realizes that this overwhelming nobleman is exactly the trump card she needed. Gesturing to her companion, Lifey introduces Rune as a trusted friend of her contracted spirit. She quickly deduces that if Rune and his spirit knew Oliver previously, it is only natural to place her trust in him. As her mind races, she begins to ask about the fascinating implications of Oliver also having a contracted spirit. Interrupting her thoughts gently, Oliver asks for a moment's pardon as he takes her injured hand. Examining her dark mark with grave intensity, he declares that her wound is far from a typical burn. Startled by his quick deduction, Lifey admits her magic almost lost control for a moment despite being a trained magical apothecary. Curious about her sudden instability, he presses her to answer if this kind of dangerous magical outburst happens often. Reassuring him quickly, she states with absolute certainty that this was her very first time losing control. Listening intently, he absorbs her words with quiet and analytical understanding. Piecing the hidden clues together, he begins to voice his brilliant deduction aloud as they walk. He accurately guesses that an overwhelming surge of anger or sadness forced her magic to violently spiral out of control. Struck by his profound empathy, she lowers her gaze in somber reflection of the truth. Touched that someone finally worried for her, she confesses that her fiancé recently broke their engagement to marry her younger sister today. Processing this heavy betrayal, he repeats the word fiancé with a sharp and calculating edge. Understanding the depth of her sorrow, he notes that her tragic history perfectly explains her erratic behavior today. Extending his hand with unwavering confidence, he invites her to face the treacherous engagement party together. Flashing a dangerously handsome smile, he asks if simply letting go of such a massive insult goes against her true nature. Stepping into the dazzling venue, the imposing double doors open to reveal the opulent hall filled with staring nobles. Commanding the room's attention, the striking pair make a breathtaking and utterly defiant entrance hand in hand. Blushing deeply under his protective grip, she quietly wonders if this exhilarating safety is what having a true lover feels like. Spotting his discarded fiancée making a grand entrance, Prince Easton turns his head with a sharp glare. While a panicked Arya desperately tries to pull him away to talk, Easton fiercely yells for them to wait. Stepping forward like an impenetrable shield, her companion demands to know what business Easton has with his date. Squaring his shoulders haughtily, Easton formally introduces himself as the second prince of the Kingdom of Dystria. Furious at her unexpected arrival, Easton aggressively demands to know why she is trespassing when she was supposedly absent. Coolly brushing off the royals' hostility, her escort smoothly explains they received a different invitation and decided to attend together. Utterly blindsided by the bold revelation, both Easton and Arya gasp in synchronized shock. Noticing the murmuring crowd starting to stare, her calm companion smoothly suggests relocating their tense conversation to a private room. Sensing Arya's bubbling panic over her treacherous lie being exposed, Easton quietly promises her that he won't let that happen. Thrusting an accusing finger forward, Easton violently declares that Lifey is suspected of trying to assassinate his precious fiancée. Horrified by the sudden and brutal escalation, a suffocating tension paralyzes the onlookers. Trembling with malicious anticipation, Arya awaits the dramatic reveal of the magical drug disguised as ordinary tea leaves. Holding up a damning bag of evidence, Easton triumphantly announces the beginning of Lifey's merciless public judgment. He aggressively proclaims that the strange tea gifted by Lifey was appraised by a magician and found to contain undeniable traces of magical power. Shocked by the twisted revelation, Lifey realizes the targeted item is the exact same medicinal brew she drank every single day. Mentally reeling from the wicked trap, she curses herself for not predicting they would weaponize the seemingly ordinary tea. Stunned by the sheer audacity of the royal setup, she wonders if framing her for assassination is taking things way too far. Whispers erupt across the room as the nobles twist Lifey's medicinal skills into sinister grounds for suspicion regarding her sister's chronic illness. Instead of panicking at the heavy accusations, her mysterious companion brings a gloved hand to his mouth and begins to softly chuckle. Amused by the pathetic scheme unfolding before him, he cryptically remarks that someone's nature really hasn't changed at all. Staring with wide-eyed disbelief, Arya reels at the sight of the man actually laughing in the face of high treason. Watching his completely unfazed demeanor against Arya's plot, Leify desperately wonders if this man will unconditionally believe in her innocence. Captivated by his unwavering confidence, she concludes that her escort is far more mysterious and strange than she ever imagined. Overwhelmed by a sudden surge of profound emotional relief, glassy tears well up in her trembling eyes. The immense magical pressure in the room visibly distorts the air as a decorative rose vase aggressively rattles against its stand. Sensing a familiarly dangerous aura, Leify realizes his seemingly calm exterior is fracturing as his own formidable magic begins to violently leak out. Dropping his polite facade entirely, his eyes sharpen as he decides it is finally time to strike back against their abusers. Pulling Leify securely against his chest, he asserts his dominance and prepares to unleash his devastating counterattack. With a wicked smirk, he openly declares that letting his beautiful companion take all the hits simply defies his very nature. Thrown completely off balance by his overwhelming magical presence, Easton stammers as his flawless plan begins to crumble. Desperate to maintain control over the narrative, Arya tries to intervene but is swiftly warned that nothing can help her now. Leaning into the confrontation, he boldly and hypothetically admits to concocting the poisonous tea just to bait the foolish prince. Flipping the script flawlessly, he challenges the royal to explain exactly whose magical potion actually woke Arya up from her supposed poisoning. Falling right into the trap, an arrogant Easton loudly insists the miraculous cure obviously belonged to his beloved Arya. Shattering the prince's entire narrative, he brandishes a vial and declares he made the cure, daring them to detect the exact same magical signature found in the poison tea. Confused by the sudden turn of events, a bewildered Arya defensively asks what her waking up has to do with anything. Standing firm with unwavering confidence, her mysterious escort coolly declares that the treacherous duo will understand everything soon enough. Sensing the undeniable shift in power, Arya tightly grips her dress as a deep, suffocating dread begins to wash over her pale face. The opulent hall falls into a tense murmur as the surrounding nobles exchange sharp whispers and piercing stares, completely captivated by the unfolding drama. Radiating an overwhelming aura of absolute control, Leify invokes the formidable spell, Words of Truth, and demands her sister finally confess her wicked lies. Caught entirely off guard by the powerful magical command, Arya lowers her gaze as the inescapable weight of the spell violently forces her dark secrets to the surface. Compelled by the magic, Arya brightly confesses with a flushed face that she deliberately lied and always knew about the effects of her sister's special potion. Blindsided by this devastating betrayal from his beloved, a horrified Prince Easton stammers her name in sheer, paralyzing disbelief. Ignoring the prince's shock, Arya cheerfully admits she claimed credit for the potion just so they could stay together forever. Finding a dark amusement in the crumbling royal facade, Leify softly chuckles while noting she simply forced her sister to reveal the ugly truth. A heavy, suffocating silence violently crashes over the grand hall as the sheer magnitude of the explosive confession paralyzes every single noble in attendance. Brandishing a swirling vial of powerful magic, she coldly explains it is a charm-dispelling potion, though she honestly never wanted to resort to such an extreme and humiliating method. Acknowledging her unwavering resolve with a silent nod, her handsome escort watches intently as she prepares to shatter the final remnants of the wicked prince's grand illusion. She boldly explains that combining magic potions with black magic creates a special mind-altering spell, and revealing the truth is the only way to break the charm. Locking eyes with her betrayers, she fiercely declares that it was Arya's venomous lie that ultimately forced her painful exile from her own noble house. Demanding their full and undivided attention, she sharply asks if they finally understand the true depth of their cruel manipulation before preparing to drop her next devastating bombshell. The scandalous topic rapidly shifts as the shocking mention of a forced and highly suspicious engagement violently ripples through the stunned audience. Leify recounts her father's cruel ultimatum to arrange a marriage with Count Howell's son, a man notoriously rumored to be a reckless playboy with illegitimate children. She furiously lists off the other disastrous matchmaking prospects, proving they were perfectly willing to sell her off to any scandalous noble. Trembling with suppressed rage, she screams at them to imagine the sheer betrayal of being kicked out and forcibly married to an outrageous monster. Oblivious to her sister's agony, Arya mindlessly apologizes and insists she truly fell in love with Lord Easton. Plunging the dagger deeper, Arya cheerfully reveals that His Highness secretly visited their home while Leifey was away. Utterly disgusted by their sickening excuses, Leifey coldly cuts off the pathetic explanation and commands them to stop spewing such infuriating nonsense. Piecing the final threads of their grand deception together, she narrows her eyes and prepares to deliver her ultimate, unyielding judgment upon the cowardly prince. She furiously realizes they deliberately framed her as a sinister meddler trying to tear the star-crossed lovers apart just to completely ruin her pristine reputation. Mentally breaking down, Leifey internally wails over her tragic destiny despite behaving herself and actively avoiding burning dragon nests in this life. Struggling to contain her massively leaking magical aura, she mentally screams in sheer frustration that her forced villainous persona isn't entirely a lie given her destructive past life. Glaring with murderous intent, Easton aggressively interrogates Leifey about what she did to his precious fiancé. Meeting his hostile glare effortlessly, she coolly replies that she simply forced the treacherous girl to speak the truth. She casually mocks his ignorance, stating that thanks to black magic, she's already experienced the crushing weight of heartbreak once. Gritting his teeth in defeat, Easton finally admits that the miraculous potion Leifey brewed was indeed the cure that saved him. Clinging to his arrogant pride, he stubbornly declares that her innocence doesn't change the fact she is actively trying to destroy their love. Completely unfazed by his pathetic and desperate accusations, the stunning apothecary turns away with an icy, untouchable grace that silently dominates the entire room. The pitiful couple with absolute disdain, she coldly notes she has zero regrets about their broken engagement while openly calling his blind devotion utterly pathetic. Deciding she has entertained this humiliating circus long enough, she fiercely vows to take immediate and devastating action to repay the monumental disrespect shown to her. A sparkling new vial into the air with a terrifyingly beautiful smile, she boldly announces the grand finale of her meticulously crafted plan to violently reclaim her stolen honor. Stepping directly into the arrogant prince's personal space, she dramatically extends her delicate hand and offers him the ultimate, undeniable test of his unwavering resolve. The arrogant royal physically violently flinches, his confident facade completely shattering as a primal, freezing terror violently grips his wide, staring eyes. Flashing a terrifyingly sweet and victorious smile, she aggressively commands him to drink the custom-made potion designed entirely to obliterate his specific memories. Backing away in sheer panic, Easton stammers that he refuses to drink an unknown substance that even the royal physicians couldn't analyze. Unfazed by his cowardice, she firmly steps forward and reminds him that this sorcery-infused brew is necessary. Desperate to escape her wrath, Easton grabs Arya and cowardly attempts to flee the terrifying confrontation. Just as the cowardly prince attempts to make his grand escape, a sudden and impossibly heavy magical force violently slams into his trembling body. Gasping for air as the invisible weight completely paralyzes his movements, the thoroughly trapped royal realizes with sheer horror that escape is absolutely impossible. Frozen in place before the staring crowd, a deeply panicked Easton violently stammers out a demand to know what monstrous invisible power is currently crushing him. Sweat pouring down his pale face, the thoroughly humiliated prince internally screams as he realizes his royal body utterly refuses to obey his frantic commands to run. As the sinister magical binding tightens its inescapable grip, a terrified Easton desperately wonders what kind of dark, overwhelming sorcery is violently tearing his agency away. Watching the arrogant prince helplessly freeze like a pathetic statue, her mysterious companion lets out a deeply amused and darkly confident chuckle that echoes through the tense hall. Stepping up beside his brilliantly dangerous partner, the unfazed escort smoothly asks how her ultimate revenge is tasting while observing the fully paralyzed royal target. With flawless aristocratic grace, he sadistically jokes that he simply made it easier for the squirming prince to take his medicine. Astounded by the effortless display of power, a wide-eyed girl gratefully acknowledges that no incantation was needed to shove the medicine directly into his mouth. She marvels at the profound reality that activating magic without chanting requires a tremendous amount of skill, something only a truly renowned magician could possibly execute. Staring intently at the enigmatic figure before her, she internally questions just who Lord Oliver truly is. Panic suddenly seizing her features, she throws her hand forward and desperately screams for him to wait. Startled by the sudden outburst, he pauses his movements with a deeply confused expression. In a frantic blur of motion, Arya intercepts the dose and dramatically throws her head back to consume it herself as shocked onlookers scream her name. Collapsing heavily onto the ornate floorboards, she is immediately met with bewildered demands asking what she thinks she is doing. Leaf realizes Arya intentionally spilled the memory-restoring potion to consume it herself, desperately wanting to stop his memories from returning even if it meant drinking a dangerous brew she didn't need. Horrified shrieks pierce the air as frantic voices repeatedly scream Arya's name in sheer panic. Clutching her mouth in sudden agony, the girl desperately calls out for her sister as a sickening wave of nausea violently overwhelms her trembling body. Terror strikes as they realize the grave reality of magical potion poisoning, acknowledging that if this terrifying situation goes wrong, it could easily cost the young girl her life. A panicked nobleman frantically shouts for someone to call a doctor immediately while cradling the swooning girl. The grim truth settles over the chaotic room that a potent magic drug absolutely cannot be cured by any normal medical treatment. Lord Oliver declares that using Lady Leaf's magic drug would be faster, as no available magician today can detoxify it. Desperation mounts as he vehemently rejects the delay, insisting there is absolutely no time for that and begging for any other way to save her. Suspicion flares as someone deduces that he is merely pretending to use the magic drug, fully intending to detoxify the poison directly with his own magic. He calmly confirms the accusation with a simple affirmative, answering the tense inquiry as if the extraordinary feat were completely obvious. Knowing she is probably the only one in the world of Lachey who can use the black magic to heal Arya, Leaf wonders how they could possibly know her secret. Observing the tense scene, the blonde man wryly observes that he really hasn't changed at all, still willingly helping the very person who betrayed him. Oliver confidently sweeps his grand cloak back in a dramatic flourish as he fiercely steps forward to take absolute control of the dire medical situation. He issues swift, authoritative commands to prepare a separate room, declaring that she, being a capable magical pharmacist, will carry out the necessary treatment. The urgent directive is immediately acknowledged with a crisp confirmation of understanding. Swirling doubts and mysteries cloud the atmosphere as a lingering thought questions just who this mysterious girl really is. The unconscious Arya is carefully laid to rest in the center of a grand, lavishly decorated aristocratic bedroom heavily draped in elegant tapestries. A gorgeously dressed blonde woman leans attentively over the massive bed, softly calling out Arya's name in the quiet room. Arya lets out a weak, pained groan as a gentle, glowing hand is softly pressed against her feverish cheek. Gazing down at the resting figure, the woman murmurs with exasperated affection about what a truly troublesome little sister she is. Preparing to use the powerful magic potion she created, she solemnly admits that she cannot bring herself to think of her as a sister right now. Placing a delicate hand firmly over Arya's chest, she fiercely resolves that she doesn't want anyone to lose their precious life because of her creation. A brilliant, pulsating sphere of magical energy ignites spectacularly beneath her open palm. With absolute focus, she vows to Arya that she will now draw out and permanently expel the lethal poison from her afflicted body. Shimmering constellations of magical light elegantly cascade over the unconscious girl as the profound healing process rapidly takes hold within the quiet room. A thick, dark miasma of extracted poison flows smoothly through the air, completely separating itself from the resting patient. Arya's thick eyelashes flutter open with a weary, breathy groan as consciousness finally returns to her exhausted mind. Relief washes over the room as the woman gently notes that the detoxification worked safely, prompting a confused mumble from the awakening girl. Still incredibly dazed and unsteady, the young girl weakly touches her own lips as she attempts to process her miraculous survival. Reflecting on the turbulent events, the woman softly deduces that maybe breaking the confession-inducing magic wasn't such a bad thing after all. Having successfully completed her vital task, she politely announces that she will now excuse herself from the grand bedroom. Stepping out into the hallway, she confidently bids them a good day, firmly assuring everyone that she is completely fine now. A firm, masculine hand suddenly shoots out to tightly grasp her frilled sleeve, abruptly halting her graceful departure into the hallway. Lord Oliver openly admits that he severely underestimated her power, intensely questioning what exactly is going on in her mind. Flustered, Leaf questions his sudden change of heart before he firmly demands she make the medicine to cure his memory loss once more. Flustered by her own brazen hypocrisy, she immediately stammers out a flurried apology for her chaotic demands. A charming, knowing smile graces his handsome features as he smoothly counters that she wouldn't want to be forgotten by him either, would she? She gasps sharply, completely caught off guard by the piercing accuracy and sheer audacity of his smooth words. In a protective flash of sudden fury, the blonde nobleman violently smacks Oliver's hand away and fiercely steps in to shield the stunned girl. Glaring with unbridled hostility, he strictly commands Oliver to step back and please not touch his fiancée so casually. Oliver stands his ground with a cool, unbothered expression, calmly absorbing the sudden aggressive intervention without flinching. The girl's face erupts into a violent, blushing shade of crimson as she loudly shrieks the word, fiancé, in pure, unadulterated shock. Flustered beyond belief, she frantically stammers, wondering whose engagement is supposedly happening with Lord Oliver and herself. Exuding a calm and collected aura, the blonde nobleman smirks with quiet confidence. Gently lifting Leify's chin, Oliver smoothly brushes off the confusion by affirming his position as her betrothed. Flustered by the sudden declaration, the blonde man frantically interrupts to clarify that he hasn't formally proposed to her yet. Cornered by the escalating situation, Leify's father nervously admits they are currently seeking an arrangement with the Cornelius Count family. Utterly horrified by this sudden revelation, Leify furiously turns to her father in disbelief over being matched with such a household. She internally recoils at the mere thought of marrying into a matrilineal family steeped in infamous legends. Dread washes over her as she recalls the Cornelius family's dark reputation for ruthlessly bullying their daughters-in-law. Overwhelmed by her grim prospects, she stands completely frozen in her elegant gown as the reality of her father's plots sinks in. Turning his back to the stunned aristocrats, Oliver confidently prepares to shatter the room's tense atmosphere. Addressing her with utmost formality, he calls out the full name of Miss Leify Quinn-Tarrant to command everyone's attention. With unwavering conviction, the mysterious man finally introduces himself as Oliver Luke Shinwood. Shock ripples through the room as he dramatically reveals his true identity as the Crown Prince of the Shinwood Empire. Gazing intently into her wide eyes, he solemnly vows to dedicate his entire life to ensuring her absolute happiness. Dropping gracefully to one knee amidst the floral decor, he gently takes her hand and begs her to come away with him. His piercing gaze remains entirely focused on Leify, radiating an intoxicating blend of sincerity and royal charm. Refusing to break eye contact, the royal suitor softly repeats his desperate plea for her to join him. Blushing furiously, Leify struggles to process the sheer magnitude of a crown prince swearing his lifelong devotion to her. A heavy, stunned silence paralyzes the onlookers as the sheer weight of the imperial proposal drops onto the chaotic room. Still incredibly weak, a bewildered Arya weakly questions if her sister is truly marrying a foreign royal. Her former fiancé stammers in pure disbelief, his arrogant facade completely crumbling before the prince's undeniable authority. Gazing at Oliver's ethereal smile, Leify internally marvels at how unbelievably noble and flawless he appears. The prince leans in close enough for his warm breath to ghost across her skin, maintaining his flawlessly gentle expression. Softly closing the distance between them, he whispers that his only wish in the world is for her to leave with him. Torn between fantasy and reality, Leify admits to herself that while she wanted a lover, this feels entirely too good to be true. Dizzy with overwhelming emotion, she realizes that a sudden proposal from such a perfect man might actually make her faint. Suspicion fiercely cuts through her swooning mind as her survival instincts kick in to warn her that something hidden is driving this proposal. Rejecting the romantic illusion with a sudden burst of panic, Leify tearfully screams out her absolute refusal. She frantically rationalizes her fears, devastated by the terrifying prospect of moving to a faraway kingdom and leaving her homeland. Desperately bargaining with her own fate, she reasons that even marrying into a terrible local house would let her stay in the Tarrant estate. Trying to calm her racing heart, she mentally justifies that not all infamous rumors can be true and there must be plenty of surviving wives. A spark of pure clarity suddenly flashes through her teary eyes as she analyzes Oliver's impossibly perfect timing. Gazing at his calm demeanor, Leify deduces that Lord Oliver is merely playing a part to help her escape her father's awful arrangement. Comforted by her own logic, she confidently concludes that this entire grand gesture is nothing more than a convenient fake engagement. Gripping his hands tightly, she proudly credits her 2 lifetimes of experience for figuring out that a man wouldn't truly propose this fast. Radiating a brilliant, completely oblivious smile, she happily accepts his proposal under the firm belief that it is entirely staged. Eager to escape the stifling tension, she urgently declares that they need to leave the suffocating room immediately. Caught slightly off guard by her sudden shift in energy, Oliver lets out a soft murmur of surprise as she pulls him along. Satisfied with her brilliant deduction, she internally decides that this temporary alliance is more than good enough for now. She lifts her chin with newfound resolve, finally ready to cast away the toxic shadows of her family and former lover. Furious at being ignored, the blonde noble viciously accuses her of tearing him and Arya apart with her deception. He wildly projects his own guilt onto her, shouting that she must have been two-timing them all along. The sharp, violent crack of a sudden slap violently echoes through the tense air and stuns the screaming man into silence. Cradling his stinging cheek in pure shock, the arrogant noble stares blankly at the girl who just struck someone for the first time in her life. Trembling but fierce, Lifey clutches her throbbing hand and furiously denies his pathetic, baseless accusations. Staring him down with absolute contempt, she declares from the bottom of her heart that she is genuinely thrilled to be erased from his memory. Refusing to waste another second on the treacherous man, she firmly grasps Oliver's arm and commands him to escort her out. A dark, terrifyingly cold smile shadows the Crown Prince's handsome face as he casts one final glance over his shoulder. His voice dripping with venomous promise, Oliver coldly warns the stunned noble that he will inevitably deeply regret hurting her. Left completely powerless in the wake of imperial authority, the disgraced suitor and the scheming father can only watch them depart in silence. Abandoned in the lavish bed, a tearful Arya buries her face in her hands as the heavy consequences of the chaotic day crash down upon her. Radiant spheres of magical energy drift through a grandiose, intricately carved architectural corridor. Surrounded by falling petals, a deeply humbled blonde woman reverently addresses the striking Lord Oliver. Expressing her profound gratitude, she earnestly thanks Prince Oliver for his timely and heroic rescue. He smoothly brushes off the praise, noting that enacting his long-awaited revenge proved far more satisfying than he had initially anticipated. Seizing the quiet moment, the charismatic royal confidently asks if she would be amenable to granting him a single favor. With an air of absolute authority, he extends a life-altering invitation for her to accompany him to the prestigious Shinwood Empire. Wide-eyed and breathless, the bewildered woman can only utter a tiny gasp of utter disbelief. Her mind races with dark insecurity, desperately trying to convince herself his proposal was merely a fleeting lie meant to defuse the tension. Unfazed by her hesitation, he expresses genuine awe at the sheer brilliance of the dark magic she had commanded earlier. She stands perfectly still in her opulent, rose-adorned gown, her cheeks burning with a heavy and stunned silence. He explains that his great nation surprisingly lacks a single dark magician, making her rare skills incredibly valuable. Flashing a disarming and charismatic smile, he officially welcomes the stunned spellcaster to his sovereign country. Trembling with a chaotic mix of shock and vulnerability, she urgently questions why he isn't terrified of her dark abilities. He immediately shatters her deepest fears, boldly declaring his unyielding desire to stay by her side and uncover every facet of her mysterious nature. Leaning in with captivating intensity, he softly but firmly claims his sudden position as her brand-new fiancé. Suddenly, a frantic man bursts onto the scene, screaming Lifey's name while aggressively accusing the prince of orchestrating a malicious trick. Startled by the sudden intrusion, Lifey casts a tense, wide-eyed glance over her shoulder, dreading the confrontation. Sweating and desperate, the chaotic interloper practically begs the retreating Lifey to stay and hear his side of the story. Shielding Lifey with his imposing cape, Prince Oliver coldly deduces that the pathetic man is only making a scene because he recognizes Shinwood royalty. Plagued by lifelong isolation, Lifey mentally tortures herself with the agonizing thought that a lonely girl like her could never suddenly obtain a wonderful lover. Mustering every ounce of her fleeting courage, she desperately asks Oliver to take her away if he truly accepts a flawed person like her. A tender, reassuring smirk graces Oliver's handsome features as he silently accepts her emotional plea, locking eyes with her. Moving with fluid grace, Oliver wraps a highly protective arm around the tearful Lifey, completely blocking the shouting man from her view. Radiating quiet dominance, he softly asks his new bride if they should finally make their grand departure. The frantic exuder collapses to his knees, his face twisted in a pathetic display of utter defeat as the couple prepares to leave. Desperation echoing through the empty halls, the man stretches out a trembling hand and violently screams Lifey's name one last time. In a breathtaking display of magic, Oliver whisks Lifey high into the sky, leaving her marveling at the sweeping, majestic cityscape far below. The couple gracefully touches down on a scenic balcony overlooking the colossal, sunlit spires of the Shinwood Empire. Breathless and completely mesmerized, Lifey stares out at the awe-inspiring architectural triumph that will soon become her brand-new home. A sudden sound from behind breaks her reverie, causing her to whirl around in a sudden panic. Bowing deeply in her lavish dress, she profusely apologizes for causing so much unnecessary trouble for the very man who saved her. Oliver gently interrupts her frantic apologies, smoothly confessing that his only true desire is to see her beautiful smile even more. Her entire face flushes a brilliant crimson, completely overwhelmed by the prince's relentless wave of royal charm. A new female companion casually arrives, prompting Oliver to casually wonder aloud where the eternally carefree Rune has wandered off to. Pondering his eternally relaxed nature, the woman confirms that Rune was the one who originally sent Prince Oliver the fateful invitation. Oliver nods in strong agreement, admitting that the unexpected summons had genuinely caught him completely off guard at the time. The narrative violently shifts back in time to the kingdom of Dystria border, right before the fateful engagement party began. Lounging on a sunlit balcony with a crystal glass in hand, an unbothered Oliver greets his imposing guest after a massive passage of time. Sitting opposite him is a hulking, dark-haired man with demonic horns, whom Oliver casually guesses he hasn't seen in roughly 300 years. Sweating profusely under the royal's gaze, the nervous horned man stammers out a polite offer to refill Oliver's wine glass. Oliver politely declines the intoxicating vintage, revealing that alcohol doesn't quite suit his delicate constitution in this particular reincarnation. The towering horned guest marvels that Oliver is now going by the name Olivier, questioning why the royal has traveled to such an incredibly remote location. Swirling his empty glass, Oliver chuckles softly and notes that his old friend Silas truly hasn't changed a single bit over the centuries. Leaning forward with sudden intensity, Oliver explains that a mysterious letter arrived yesterday, compelling him to abandon his post and travel immediately. Silas's demonic eyes narrow in sudden comprehension as he deduces the letter must be directly connected to their ancient past lives. A solemn, heavy silence fills the air as Oliver confirms the dark suspicion without a shadow of a doubt. Out of nowhere, a frustrated blonde woman storms into the room, aggressively scolding the two legendary figures for their eternal foolishness. Glaring at the cowering Silas, she bluntly complains that it is ridiculously hard to tell which one of them is supposed to be the terrifying Demon King. She ruthlessly berates the Demon King for remaining entirely unchanged over 300 years, prompting a pathetic, stuttering apology directed at Lara. Shrinking away from her fiery wrath, the mighty Demon King weakly attempts to flatter Lara by calling her just as adorable as she ever was. Furious at the perceived insult, the fiery blonde Lara loudly shrieks and demands to know if she is being called childish. Calmly sipping his vintage wine, Prince Oliver softly asks the glaring Lara to treat his old friend Silas a bit more kindly. Pouting with a potent mix of stubbornness and guilt, Lara silently reflects on the prince's gentle but firm reprimand. Yielding to Oliver's unassailable logic, Lara reluctantly drags out a grudging apology to the cowering Demon King. Taking control of the conversation, Oliver confesses that he had completely forgotten about Lord Silas until an unexpected letter from Lord Rune arrived. He explains that the shocking letter revealed crucial information about his past life lover, officially confirming that her name in this current era is Lifey. Adding another layer to the mystery, Oliver reveals that the carefree Rune is actually the high-ranking spirit contracted to the legendary dark magician Raleigh. Silas astutely deduces that Rune is working exclusively for Raleigh's sake, as high-ranking spirits remain fiercely loyal across lifetimes just like his own eternal bond with Lara. The narrative briefly flashes back to Rune casually announcing his search for a suitable escort for his master at an upcoming evening party. Overwhelmed by the cosmic odds, Oliver marvels at the impossible, miraculous coincidence that his lost love has been reincarnated in the exact same era as him. Absorbing the massive and emotional revelation, the ancient Demon King narrows his demonic eyes and mutters in deep understanding. Silas grimly notes that Oliver exhausted every conceivable method to save his lover in his past life, which ultimately resulted in him being completely erased from her memory. A dark, haunting shadow falls over Oliver's handsome face as he remembers paying the ultimate, agonizing price of the forbidden spell. Staring blankly at the table, Oliver softly but firmly confirms the devastating truth of his ancient sacrifice. Breaking the heavy and mournful silence, Silas calls out his old friend's name with profound, unspoken sympathy. Oliver immediately corrects the flow of conversation by bringing up Vincent, theorizing that her sealed memories will eventually resurface on their own. Maintaining his composed and royal facade, the prince firmly decides that this simply isn't the right time to reveal the full, tragic truth. Burning with renewed hope and unwavering resolve, Oliver declares his earnest desire to meet her naturally and build a brand new relationship from scratch, even if she already loves another man. A deeply unamused Lara sharply crosses her arms and bluntly reminds the prince that he absolutely cannot just impulsively hug the poor girl upon reuniting. Flashing a confident and breathtaking smirk, Oliver smoothly assures his skeptical companions that he has the delicate situation completely under control. Utterly unconvinced by his charming smile, Lara and Silas stare at the overly confident prince with deadpan, suspicious expressions. Fast-forwarding directly to the present timeline, Oliver humorously admits in a narrative aside that he completely lost control and hugged her anyway. Back in the opulent halls of the Shinwood Empire, a flustered Lifey nervously apologizes while standing awkwardly beside her dazzling savior. Stepping forward with absolute, undeniable regal grace, Oliver gently addresses the anxious blonde woman. With a sweeping and welcoming gesture, the prince officially invites her to explore the grand, sprawling castle of her brand-new empire. Bathed in radiant golden sunlight, Lifey stares in pure awe at the stunningly handsome royal confidently leading the way. Later, in a lavishly decorated parlor, hot, fragrant tea is gracefully poured into a delicate cup by a silent maid. A completely flustered Lifey nervously thanks the departing servant as an incredibly decadent spread of sweets is left just for her. Left entirely alone with her racing thoughts, a sudden wave of overwhelming realization washes over the trembling girl. Panicking internally, Lifey desperately tries to calm her racing heart, feeling completely out of place in such an unimaginably luxurious setting. Blushing a furious crimson, she lets out a small, awkward giggle as her mind short-circuits trying to process her insane new reality. Taking a refined sip of his tea, a serene Oliver warmly confesses how incredibly happy he is to share this peaceful, quiet moment with her. Lifey's racing heart swells with complex emotions as she silently ponders the unbelievable, terrifying luxury of this comfortable new life. Shattering the quiet atmosphere, the eternally carefree Rune casually appears sitting on the window ledge, brightly complementing the room's spectacular view. Startled by the spirit's sudden intrusion, Lifey frantically scolds Rune for his terrible manners while he playfully mocks her old, cramped living conditions. She violently bows in a frantic apology for her spirit's rudeness, but an endlessly amused Oliver gently assures her he doesn't mind at all. While Rune cheerfully devours a blueberry scone, a highly curious Lifey finally asks how the carefree spirit and the royal prince actually know each other. Gathering her fleeting courage, the nervous girl directly addresses the composed prince in hopes of an honest explanation. Pausing with a gloved finger to his lips, Oliver locks his captivating gaze onto her with an incredibly sly, charming aura. Breaking the rising tension, he softly and smoothly asks if she is still angry about the chaotic events of the day. Completely thrown off balance by his casual demeanor, a bewildered Lifey stammers out his name in sheer confusion. Leaning in with an irresistible, blinding smile, the handsome prince boldly demands that she drop all formalities and simply call him Oliver. He smoothly and logically points out that it would be entirely unnatural for his own fiancé to continue using stiff, distant honorifics. Absolute panic erupts across Lifey's face as she desperately asks if his sudden marriage proposal was merely a convenient lie to save her earlier. Laughing off her intense and frantic reaction, a cheerful Oliver admits that dropping formalities immediately might be a bit too sudden for their fresh reunion. Adopting a slightly more serious tone, the prince explains that his position is heavily complicated because his royal aides constantly pester him about lacking a bride. Lifey's brilliant eyes widen in sudden, shocking realization as she rapidly begins to piece together the prince's underlying political logic. She astutely deduces that a rare dark magician acting as his temporary fiancé would expertly satisfy his political needs without causing domestic uproar. Thrilled by her incredibly sharp intellect, a relaxed Oliver nods in full agreement with her flawless tactical assessment. Dropping her gaze slightly, a conflicted Lifey begins to process the heavy responsibility of this fake engagement as a quiet hesitation lingers on her lips. Pondering deeply, A mysterious voice suggests that there seems to be another reason behind the unfolding events. Fixing her with an intense, unwavering gaze, the handsome blonde man directly asks if she is doubting him. Flashing a warm, disarming smile, he watches as the young twin-tailed blonde girl, Lara, flinches nervously under his sudden attention. Driven by a desperate desire not to be alone and realizing their interests are aligned, Lara concludes she has no choice but to accept his generous offer. Curtsying with graceful determination amidst sparkling lights, she firmly declares that she shall conduct herself as Prince Oliver's fiancé, to which an affirming response of "understood" is given. Refusing to leave the place until she promises to use his name, he smoothly demands that she call him Oliver, leaving her utterly bewildered. Gazing across the opulent, sunlit room, someone silently observes the blonde prince sitting casually on the windowsill. Defying the boundaries of reality, Lara courageously steps through the shimmering surface of an ornate, magical mirror portal. Leaping through the portal with a graceful bound, she descends lightly into the dazzling unknown. Her large, expressive eyes widen in sheer astonishment as she takes in the breathtaking sight before her. A single, hesitant syllable escapes her lips as she struggles to articulate her overwhelming emotions. While a maid promptly announces that a letter has arrived for Lord Oliver, Lara blushes profusely, utterly overwhelmed by something she finds incredibly cute. The elegant maid stands in a poised profile, silently waiting for the prince's attention. Intense crimson rushes to Lara's cheeks, her expression frozen in a mix of pure shock and flustered awe. Breaking the tension, he fondly points out that she is making the exact same face as when they first met. Utterly perplexed by his familiar tone, the wide-eyed girl internally questions if this is truly their first meeting. Panicking over how her secret was discovered, Lara aggressively introduces herself and preemptively declares she will not be friends with him. Hesitation thickens the air as a profound realization begins to dawn upon them. Shock ripples through the room as someone speculates if the mysterious missive could be from the Duke of Tarland's house. Chaos erupts as Lara screams in disbelief over a sudden marriage proposal from the second son, a fact the prince calmly confirms as correct. Rejecting the idea that a noble would notice her daughter, an angry voice deduces that Arya must have gone crying to them to orchestrate this. Radiating icy authority, Oliver steps in to defend her, warning the detractor that they are awfully bold with their words toward his precious fiancé. Watching his protective stance, Lara flusters internally, realizing he is totally acting the part of a dedicated fiancé. Struggling to maintain her composure, she desperately reminds herself not to react to everything, and yet, her heart betrays her. Completely overwhelmed by his smooth charm, the flustered twin-tailed girl frantically covers her burning red face with trembling hands. Doubt creeps in as someone questions the letter's contents, specifically the mention of the Marquis of Larna's second son who has supposedly never even stepped outside his house. Shifting the entire trajectory of the conversation, a resolute voice suddenly declares a complete change of mind. Flashing a dangerous, confident smirk, Prince Oliver decides to play a new card, admitting he was initially satisfied just bringing Leify to this country. Escalating the situation to an international level, he boldly proposes inviting the royal family of Distria to their grand engagement announcement party. Absolute shock shatters her composure as she shrieks at the sheer magnitude of hosting a massive party. While he views the impending chaos as fun and demands to get ready immediately, she practically short-circuits at the urgency of doing it right away. Amidst the frantic planning, Rune happily devours a platter of sweets, praising how good it is while ignoring the pleas to actually say something helpful. Exasperated by the sheer lack of urgency in the room, someone screams out that everyone is acting way too carefree in this critical moment. Softening his gaze with a hidden melancholic warmth, the prince confesses that even if it's just a temporary relationship, that's fine with him. Dropping a devastatingly romantic line, he vows that everything will be perfect as long as she remains steadfastly by his side. Stunned by the unexpected depth of his affection, she softly murmurs Prince Oliver's name in breathless wonder. Preparing to make his exit through the grand double doors, he suddenly pauses, remembering one final, crucial detail. Sweeping her off her feet in a dizzying, romantic dip amidst magical sparkles, he forces her to breathe out the name Oliver. Leaning in dangerously close to her burning face, he triumphantly reminds her that he swore he wouldn't leave the room until she called him by his first name. Overloaded by his overwhelming charisma, her mind frantically screams that his devastating charm is simply too powerful. When she awkwardly tries to call him Oliver, Your Highness, he swiftly corrects her with a blunt, wrong, demanding she drop the formalities. Trembling intensely and on the verge of tears from sheer embarrassment, she finally stammers out, "Oliver, sir." Smiling down at his deeply flustered, blushing fiancé, he graciously accepts her timid attempt, declaring that for now, that's fine. The heavy, ornate wooden doors shut with a resounding thud, leaving her alone with her racing thoughts. Collapsing onto the floor in her voluminous gown, she internally wails that the sparkling crown prince is on a completely different level and is entirely used to this kind of romantic assault. While she cries out, asking how anyone could handle such intense flirting, Rune gently offers his hand to help the defeated milady up from the floor. Scolding them affectionately, a voice notes that they haven't changed at all, especially since the overwhelming shock almost caused her to lose control of her magic again. The sudden, serious invocation of Miss Lara's name cuts through the lingering comedic tension of the room. Shattering her romantic illusions, a somber revelation drops that Lord Oliver holds someone very dear, and everything he does is exclusively for that person. The devastating truth visibly crushes Lara as a shadow of profound heartbreak and shock washes over her pale, beautiful face. Gripped by a sudden, heart-pounding realization, her face flushes a deep red as she wonders if she is the important person he holds dear. Shattering her hopeful illusion, Rune cheerfully remarks that her optimistic guess is truly wonderful to behold. Flailing in utter embarrassment, she vehemently denies the possibility and demands he deliver his usual snarky comeback. Adopting a more serious tone, the spirit bluntly warns Lady Lifey not to get the wrong idea while proceeding with the ceremony. Descending gracefully in a column of sparkling light, the spirit floats smoothly beside the startled girl. Glaring with undisguised irritation, he clicks his tongue in sheer disgust at the girl's nasty attitude. Pondering his next move, he decides he must delve deeper, piece by piece, into Lady Lifey's true feelings. Retreating into his own thoughts, he concludes it is best to simply remain quiet for the time being. Presenting a half-eaten crispy chocolate cookie, he casually asks her what kind of relationship she truly shares with Lord Oliver. Exasperated by his sudden intrusion, the twin-tailed blonde whirls around and yells Rune's name. Realizing her pressing questions will go unanswered, she mentally notes that Rune absolutely refuses to tell her the truth. Floating effortlessly through the grand halls, the spirit leaves the reading prince behind to gaze out over the magnificent castle architecture. A piercing, contemplative eye narrows in the silence, brimming with unspoken thoughts. Dropping down casually onto the windowsill, Rune interrupts the prince's reading to ask if something happened to her. Shutting his book with a soft thud, the blonde prince replies that he simply wanted to talk to the spirit at least once. Shifting his gaze downward, Oliver admits that he never properly thanked Rune for his past actions. Expressing his deep gratitude, the prince confesses that the letter allowed him to finally reunite with her. A quiet intensity settles over his handsome features as the weight of his heartfelt confession lingers in the air. Brushing off the praise, Rune smirks and compliments the prince's perfect timing, noting he was trying to figure out how to get them together anyway. Flashing a confident smile, Oliver questions if the spirit seriously believes he wouldn't have managed it on his own. Asserting his unwavering loyalty, Rune solemnly declares that he is a contracted spirit who acts exclusively for Lady Lifey's sake. Frustration bleeds into his voice as he recalls a past life where the contract magic circle was inexplicably repelled. Demanding an explanation from the elegant woman, he aggressively asks why she hasn't formed a contract with anyone yet. Surrounded by floating books, the long-haired woman wonders aloud if she made some kind of terrible mistake. Sweating slightly at the memory, Rune mentally remarks that the woman is far more childish than her appearance suggests. Staring out into the vast sky, a melancholic thought echoes that he has been waiting for someone like her all this time. Dismissing the past anomaly, the narrative reveals that the magic circle activating twice was ultimately deemed a malfunction. Leaning forward with a knowing smirk, Rune points out that the prince's contracted spirit seems prone to odd behavior. Piercing the silence with a sharp question, the spirit asks if Lara said something to Lifey. Processing the new information, Rune deduces that she must have mentioned Lord Oliver having someone important to him. Intertwining his fingers thoughtfully, Oliver considers casting a spell to keep her away from Lifey for a while. Gazing up at the crescent moon, the spirit muses that while they wish for their master's happiness, it isn't necessarily tied to personal feelings. Elaborating on the complex spiritual bonds, Rune notes that even Lara is dangerously fixated on her master and harbors hostility toward Lifey. Clarifying the nature of these intense emotions, he states it isn't romantic love or forced magic, but something entirely different for him. Overlooking the sprawling, majestic academy grounds, a silent voice wrestles with how to even label such a profound feeling. Overwhelmed by the suddenness of her own engagement party, she marvels at the breathtaking dress Lord Oliver personally selected for her. Admiring the lightning-fast preparations, she takes a moment to process the whirlwind of events transforming her life. A polite double knock echoes against the ornate double doors, followed by a smooth request to enter. Stepping into the room, the blonde prince gazes at her softly and praises how well the dress suits her. Bowing gracefully, she thanks him, to which he smugly replies that it looks exactly as perfect as he imagined. A rush of emotion overtakes her as she realizes this is the very first time anyone has ever picked out clothing for her. The profound weight of that first-time experience leaves her breathless and wide-eyed. Snapping out of her daze, she turns back to Lord Oliver with a flustered apology. Gently touching her face, he reminds her of the engagement party and corrects her formal address, prompting her to internally panic about getting into character. Leaning in dangerously close to whisper in her ear, he declares he is counting on her today, leaving her completely stunned. Mustering all her courage, she softly breathes out the name Oliver without any royal titles. His eyes widen in genuine surprise, completely caught off guard by her sweet, direct use of his name. A soft, breathless affirmation escapes his lips as the intimate moment stretches between them. Settling into a warm, confident resolution, he accepts her words with a gentle promise of certainty. Framed by a beautiful array of roses, her reflection in the mirror reveals a stunning, contemplative young woman ready to face her new destiny. Displaying a handful of glowing vials, a young man presents a variety of mystical concoctions, including a love potion, a presence-erasing brew, and a dress color changer. Hoping to make a friend tonight, Lifey considers offering the love potion to a noble lady as a magician-like solution for relationship advice. Bursting with optimism, she eagerly anticipates using this brilliant plan to get closer to her potential new companion. However, an ominous premonition hangs over her, revealing she will eventually regret utilizing this love potion to the point of death. Arriving at a breathtaking ballroom, Lifey and Prince Oliver marvel at the unparalleled, massive scale of the Shinwood Empire's extravagant gathering. Leaning in closely, Oliver warns her to be careful of specific influential factions today, like the Bells and Meyer families. He explains that these noble houses possess long histories and have aggressively proposed marriage alliances multiple times. Believing words alone are insufficient, Oliver decides it will be quicker for her to witness his complicated circumstances firsthand at the party. Nodding dutifully, the young girl firmly confirms she understands the gravity of the situation. Turning to his quiet aide, Lord Oliver instructs Rune to carefully keep an eye on Lifey during the event. As they mingle, Lifey reflects thoughtfully on Rune's sudden change in behavior. She observes he is now showing himself openly, entirely abandoning his old habit of erasing his presence to hide his high-ranking spirit from others. Suddenly, a striking man approaches, mockingly asking the noble lady if she is simply too dazzled by his good looks to gaze away. Flustered and completely caught off guard, Lifey vehemently denies his arrogant assumption. Undeterred by her reaction, the charismatic stranger smoothly shifts his attention to greet Prince Oliver. Stepping onto the scene, an impeccably dressed noblewoman boldly congratulates the couple on their engagement. Recognizing the newcomer, Oliver politely returns the greeting and officially identifies her as Lady Sonia Meyer. Hearing the infamous name, Lifey stares intently at the glamorous woman before her. Maintaining his composed facade, Prince Oliver watches the ensuing interaction with a cool, calculating gaze. Internal alarms ring in Lifey's mind as she immediately remembers this is a young lady from a dangerous house to watch out for. Oozing with false sweetness, Sonia confidently boasts about her incredibly close relationship with Prince Oliver while introducing herself. Offering a polite introduction as Lifey Quintarlant, the young girl naively assumes Sonia actually seems like a nice person. Abruptly cutting the conversation short, Sonia urges them to enjoy themselves as she makes a swift exit. Turning her back to the couple, Sonia strides away with a sharp, dismissive whip of her elaborate hair. Her friendly mask completely shattering, Sonia furiously wonders how a mere duke's daughter from a small country managed to seduce him. Sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, Lifey recoils in sheer surprise. Noticing her visible distress, someone gently asks if something is the matter with Lady Lifey. Watching the imposing figures converse, Lifey solemnly accepts that the harsh reality is exactly as she thought. She silently notes that people at these elite gatherings are truly never quite what they seem. Despite the tension, she remains optimistic that simply talking to others at a party might accidentally help her make a true friend. Standing beside her, Oliver casts a soft, mesmerizing glance downward. Chuckling with genuine amusement, the prince whispers that she really is quite something. Spotting his father approaching, Oliver declares this bold move will completely drive off the king's absurd matchmaking attempts. Leify vividly recalls pleading with him to act like they were truly a couple, despite knowing it was impossible. A brief flashback shows Oliver silently absorbing her desperate proposal. Doubt begins to creep in as Leify wonders if presenting such an impudent request was a massive mistake. Pulled back to reality, she lets out a confused hum as Oliver steps intimately closer. Her eyes wide with astonishment, she gazes up into his intense, unreadable expression. A dangerously charming smirk forms on Oliver's lips as he prepares to execute their ruse. Moving with practiced elegance, he gently takes her delicate hand in his gloved fingers. Surrounded by a shimmering aura of flowers, he tenderly presses his lips against her knuckles in a textbook display of affection. Closing the distance entirely, Oliver stares deeply into her eyes and seductively asks if this is what being lovers is like. Leify's eye twitches as the sheer proximity and intensity of his act completely short-circuit her brain. A silent, panicked shriek echoes in her mind as her face erupts into a violent blush. Overwhelmed by his refined aura, she desperately tries to handle the fact that his face, voice, and overall level are just way too high for her. Breaking the romantic tension, a booming voice suddenly calls out for Rune. The shouting persists, urgently demanding Rune's attention across the crowded hall. Oliver asks if their intimate pose is okay just as an older gentleman joyfully shouts Leify's name. Bursting with paternal pride, the older man declares he came all this way just to see his beloved daughter. Stammering awkwardly, Leify thanks her father for coming while trying to mentally recover from the prince's devastating charm offensive. Addressing the sudden change in attendance, the king explains that they had only intended to invite family members today. Leify's father nervously reveals that he had to come alone because Arya adamantly refused to leave her room until Leify returned. Listening to this weak excuse, Leify internally questions if her father was ever actually that close to her sister. Hyping herself up for the impending charade, Leify firmly resolves to play the perfect lover and refuses to back down. Moving with practiced grace, Oliver gently takes her arm to steady her nerves as they step fully into the spotlight. Leaning completely into the act, Leify sweetly expresses her deep sorrow that her mother and Arya could not attend their engagement party. Looking up with a dazzling, innocent smile, she asks Oliver for loving validation in front of the watchful crowd. Internally panicking behind her sweet facade, she desperately hopes she is projecting the exact right vibe of a doting partner. Maintaining his intense focus, Oliver stares deeply into her eyes and confidently agrees. Playing his role flawlessly, he loudly laments their absence while declaring that Leify looks especially beautiful and charming tonight. He shamelessly boasts that this is the perfect day to show everyone that such a captivating woman is entirely his. As he drops the heavy proposal line, Leify internally screams at how effortlessly smooth he is at this fake romance. Turning a sharp glare toward his father, Oliver aggressively states that receiving marriage proposals from other men is frankly offensive. Stunned by his dangerously protective tone, Leify completely freezes in place. Visibly recoiling from his son's fierce devotion, the king stammers that he never imagined Oliver felt this deeply about her. Watching her father's distressed reaction, Leify stands utterly bewildered by the escalating tension. The king frustratedly grumbles about Arya's troublesome influence, remembering how she also interfered with the cheating ex-fiancé issue. Sighing in defeat, he concedes that forcing someone's feelings right now could literally endanger the entire nation. Yielding to Oliver's immense pressure, the king officially drops the alternate marriage proposal he brought today. Curiosity piqued by the sudden retreat, Oliver smoothly asks for the identity of the rejected suitor. The king proudly reveals it was a fine young man who happens to be the second son of the prestigious Count Smith family. Brushing it off as a minor detail, the king casually mentions that the young man recently suffered from memory loss. Hearing the ominous words regarding memory loss, Leify jolts with terrifying realization. Oliver immediately connects the dots, noting aloud that her former fiancé also suffered from the exact same affliction. Trembling slightly, Leify nervously recalls that the memory loss specifically targeted only memories involving her and Arya. Stepping into the conversation, Rune explains that the doctor found the cause to be completely unknown, leaving them unsure if it was magic or a curse. Narrowing his eyes, Oliver silently processes this highly suspicious and dangerous coincidence. He sharply points out that nobles randomly losing specific memories is far too unnatural to ignore and requires a thorough investigation. A deep sense of dread creeps into Leify's expression as the horrific implications settle in. Deducing the truth, Oliver theorizes that it would completely make sense if Arya was utilizing the terrifying power of a charmed saint to orchestrate this. Taking charge of the grim situation, Oliver decides they must launch a proper investigation into the matter immediately. Feeling overwhelmed by the dark turn of events, Leify hastily excuses herself to step out for a bit. She awkwardly waves them off, urging the serious men to not mind her departure. Walking away, she blushes furiously over his flawless acting as random guests whisper about how perfectly they look together. Flustered by the overwhelming attention, she desperately hopes no one is actively making fun of her. Clutching her chest in agony, Leify realizes the sheer stress of this fake relationship is taking a severe physical toll on her heart. A sudden flashback shows Oliver smoothly and charmingly reassuring her that he doesn't seem like a playboy. She internally groans at the memory, knowing his natural, incredible smoothness makes the act entirely too convincing. Whispers echo through the crowded hall as onlookers gossip about the mysterious woman contracted with a high-ranking spirit. Suddenly, elegant but purposeful footsteps approach her from behind. A sharp, decisive footstep cuts through the ambient noise, signaling the ominous approach of an unknown, highly influential individual entering her immediate vicinity. Stepping into her view with an overwhelming aura of confidence, an impeccably dressed, dark-haired noblewoman locks eyes with the flustered girl and menacingly addresses her directly. Mental alarms blare as Leify identifies the newcomer as Aurelia Bells, a high-risk person who immediately boasts about her father working closely with Lord Oliver. Navigating the perilous introduction alongside the spirit rune, the young blonde politely introduces herself as Leify Quintarland in a move that feels entirely like a high-stakes political chess match. Staring down her prey, Aurelia Bells unleashes a piercing, scrutinizing glare that seems to ruthlessly evaluate every single fiber of the Duke's daughter standing before her. Breaking the tense silence with sharp condescension, Aurelia notes the presence of the prince's spirit and directly asks Lady Leify if she is quite a skilled user of magic. Hastily deflecting the terrifying magical inquiry, Leify nervously clarifies that rather than wielding traditional magic, she actually worked as a humble magical pharmacist. Instantly dropping her intimidating facade, Aurelia's expression shifts into one of genuine intrigue as she reveals she is also highly interested in magical potions. With eyes sparkling in sheer, unadulterated joy, Leify leans forward in overwhelming disbelief and excitedly asks if the imposing noblewoman is really interested in her niche craft. Before their blossoming friendship can truly take root, a massive swarm of eager partygoers loudly interrupts, crowding Lady Leify and practically screaming their congratulations on her engagement. Utterly consumed by the suffocating tidal wave of high society nobles, the overwhelmed young girl can only mentally scream at the sheer, terrifying number of people swarming her. Crushing her desperate hopes for companionship, Rune bluntly informs the ecstatic blonde that she has entirely misunderstood the situation and that she has not, in fact, finally made any friends. In the grand, opulent ballroom, a crowd of elegantly dressed young women gathers to whisper and socialize in their flowing evening gowns. The atmosphere shifts dramatically as all eyes turn toward the grand entrance to observe the breathtaking arrival of the stunning Lady Leify. Eager to uncover the romantic history of the celebrated couple, an inquisitive noblewoman politely demands to know exactly how Lady Leify first met Lord Oliver. A joyful young woman bursts into laughter alongside a sophisticated young man who quickly covers his mouth in shock as the word demon playfully slips out. The gossiping aristocrats marvel at how Lord Oliver mercilessly rejected even the most beautiful young ladies, making it all the more shocking that Leify was the one who finally won his heart. Probing further with a mix of awe and thinly veiled jealousy, they declare that Lady Leify must possess truly exceptional qualities to have secured such a prestigious engagement. Caught entirely off guard by the intense scrutiny and high expectations, the blonde stammers nervously over the intimidating word, exceptional. Sweating under the pressure, she quietly wonders to herself in what possible way she could be considered extraordinary enough to satisfy their wild imaginations. Her mind hilariously wanders to extreme feats like burning down dragon nests, holding ties with the Demon King, or freezing entire mountains to stop rumors. Rune sighs and flatly informs his lady that her wild, forbidden spell imaginations are completely off the mark. A dark-haired noblewoman suddenly interrupts with a dramatic gasp, accusing someone of being exceedingly rude to Lady Lifey. She aggressively claims the other woman is disparaging those around her out of a false sense of superiority, sparking immediate defensive protests. The confrontation escalates as the dark-haired lady haughtily declares that measuring someone's worth through such conversations is in incredibly poor taste. The accused noblewoman visibly bristles with intense shock and indignation. Lady Sonia fiercely mocks the other woman's lack of refinement, demanding if she truly believed she was learning potion magic from Lady Aurelia merely to court Lord Oliver. Furious tension visibly radiates from the clenched teeth and trembling form of the insulted lady. Panicked bystanders scream as Lady Sonia's magical aura dangerously flares out of control in response to the vicious dare. The protagonist watches in frantic alarm, realizing this intense clash has escalated far beyond a simple verbal argument. Sonia and Aurelia lock eyes in a fierce, silent standoff, dark energy swirling between their intensely glaring faces. Enraged magical sparks fly as one of the women fiercely dares her rival to repeat her insulting words. Rune watches the unfolding drama with a smirk, casually noting how entertaining their bitter history is when he is not involved. The panicked protagonist desperately scolds Rune, warning him that this is no time for his nonchalant fooling around. She nervously points out that the destructive magical pressure is going to set the entire hall ablaze. Onlookers cry out in sheer terror as explosive black magical flames suddenly erupt back into the center of the ballroom. The protagonist frantically begs Rune to intervene, lamenting her inability to use her own magic since she is hiding her dark magician identity. Unbothered by the chaos, Rune lazily offers to simply grab her and flee the scene. She furiously rejects his cowardly escape plan, demanding a much more fundamental and permanent solution to the crisis. Rune's eye sharpens with a calculating glint as he considers her forceful request. He smoothly suggests a temporary magical nullification, prompting her to anxiously question if that crosses into the forbidden territory of black magic. Resolved to stop the disaster, the protagonist grimly decides that if diplomacy fails, she must resort to forceful intervention. As dark flames devour the opulent stairs, Rune mentally defines magic nullification as a paralyzing spell he would vastly prefer to avoid using. A desperate bystander pleads with Lady Aurelia and Lady Sonia to calm down and talk about Lord Oliver peacefully. One of the furious dueling nobles ruthlessly dismisses the peacemaker as utterly annoying while preparing her next spell. She venomously commands the country bumpkin duke's daughter to shut her mouth. A terrifying pillar of dark fire erupts across the banquet table, causing the protagonist to shriek in pure terror while Rune stands unfazed. While the protagonist frantically screams his name, Rune casually brushes off her panic with an exasperated sigh. The aggressive noblewoman relentlessly escalates the fight by loudly declaring the activation of a continuation spell. A brief, tense magical vibration pulses through the air just before the impending clash. Swirling remnants of volatile energy hiss as the devastating spell charges to its peak. Blistering projectiles of unstable dark magic completely shatter the surrounding space as they blast toward their target. The protagonist's eyes widen in sheer horror as the lethal barrage of magic closes in on the defenseless nobles. Acting on pure instinct, she dashes forward and screams for the counterattack to begin. The names of the two bitter rivals, Sonia and Aurelia, hang heavy in the air as their catastrophic magical duel reaches its absolute climax. The protagonist tightly zeroes in on the very source of their raging magical energy with unwavering focus. Thrusting her hand forward into the chaotic blast, she unleashes her ultimate nullification command to freeze the magic. The furious duelists gasp in bewildered shock as their devastating spells abruptly shatter into harmless crystalline fragments. The overwhelming torrent of deadly magic dissolves into sparkling dust right before the eyes of the stunned noblewomen. Instead of a fiery explosion, the massive magical payload instantly neutralizes into a massive, harmless cloud of hissing steam. The confused woman looks around in total disbelief, completely baffled as to why the massive explosion carried absolutely no heat. The two rival noblewomen stand frozen in stunned silence, completely baffled by the sudden disappearance of their lethal magic. Whispers ripple through the grand hall as shocked onlookers immediately pinpoint Lady Lifey as the source of the incredible feat. Feeling the heavy weight of the crowd's sudden attention, the protagonist nervously stammers out a flustered sound. A stunned guest recalls her academy days, identifying the chilling sensation as a highly advanced form of magical nullification. Excited murmurs break out as the nobles speculate if this extraordinary power is the real reason Lord Oliver chose Lady Lifey. The awestruck crowd marvels at the display of superior foreign education, noting that such advanced techniques were never taught in Distria. Panic heavily sets in as the protagonist realizes she might become feared, terrified of causing trouble for Lord Oliver. Overwhelmed by the escalating situation, she tightly covers her mouth with a sharp groan of discomfort. A wave of sheer disgust washes over her as her body severely rejects the dark magic she was forced to use. Desperate to escape her frozen limbs, she resolves to use a presence-erasing potion just as a familiar voice calls out her name. Lord Oliver bursts onto the scene with genuine concern, demanding to know what she just did. The protagonist stares in utter bewilderment, completely shocked to see Lord Oliver suddenly appearing before her. Lord Oliver gently cradles her face, explaining that he felt the massive disturbance while speaking to Lady Aurelia and Lady Sonia. A pained groan escapes the protagonist's lips as the severe magical backlash continues to rack her exhausted body. He correctly deduces that the intense magic nullification is violently rejecting her constitution, profusely apologizing for getting her involved. Without a moment's hesitation, Lord Oliver declares his intention to immediately take her somewhere to rest. The surrounding noblewomen clutch their faces in sheer disbelief, utterly scandalized by the sudden romantic display. An onlooker dramatically laments that the legendary princess carrying their romantic dreams has waited 300 years for such a moment. Cringing under the blinding spotlight, the protagonist wonders why Rune is not the one handling this wildly conspicuous escape. Lord Oliver shoots down any objections with an unwavering gaze, firmly insisting that he will be the one to escort her. The protagonist looks up at him in a breathless daze, completely disarmed by his intense and protective presence. A warm sense of calm washes over her trembling form, mysteriously soothing the chaotic magical backlash ravaging her body. Desperate to escape the staring crowd, she quickly confirms she possesses a potion to suppress their presence. Reaching into her pocket, she hastily presents a small, shimmering vial to her protective escort. To her absolute horror, Lord Oliver swiftly snatches the vial and downs its contents with a casual apology. He mistakenly thanks her for the stealth aid, confidently declaring that they will no longer draw any unwanted attention. A chilling realization strikes the protagonist as she stares at the remaining vials resting heavily in her trembling palm. She frantically realizes the presence-concealing potion is still in her hand, meaning Lord Oliver just drank something entirely different. Pure dread crashes down upon her as she realizes she just fed the nation's most eligible bachelor a highly concentrated love potion. Her mind spirals into absolute chaos, internally screaming over the outrageous blunder she has just committed. Completely oblivious to the impending disaster, Lord Oliver gently guides her to a quiet room to recover. She guiltily thanks him for his kindness, secretly agonizing over the terrible situation she has now dragged him into. Remaining surprisingly calm, Lord Oliver logically deduces that since there are no prior romantic feelings, the potion's amplifying effects should not be a major problem. The protagonist nervously stammers, struggling to confess the true nature of the potion he just consumed. A sudden, intense daze washes over Lord Oliver's features as the magical concoction violently takes hold of his senses. He suddenly slumps forward, prompting the panicked protagonist to cry out his name in sheer alarm. Without warning, Lord Oliver's hand shoots out and tightly clamps down on her wrist with an iron grip. The protagonist's eyes widen in absolute terror, realizing the devastating love potion is finally taking full effect. Lord Oliver blinks in deep confusion, genuinely baffled as to why he is suddenly clutching her arms so tightly. Mustering every ounce of courage, the protagonist nervously confesses that she accidentally made him drink a powerful love potion. Lord Oliver freezes in sheer shock, his sharp eyes widening as the impossible truth fully registers in his clouded mind. Desperately fighting the overwhelming urge, he apologizes profusely while admitting his mind is rapidly losing its rational grip. The protagonist mentally panics, realizing that since the potion amplifies existing feelings, his intense reaction means the situation is infinitely worse than they thought. Lord Oliver slowly looks up, his heavily flushed face and intensely burning gaze locking onto her with predatory focus. Every instinct in the protagonist's body screams at her to run before the magical obsession fully consumes him. She frantically tries to scramble backward, whining that fleeing is impossible when he refuses to let go. Trembling under his incredibly intense stare, she desperately pleads with him to release her captive hand. All rational thought completely shatters as Lord Oliver passionately confesses his absolute love for her. The protagonist freezes in total shock as Lord Oliver forcefully pulls her into a desperately tight embrace. Surrendering entirely to the potion's overwhelming magic, he affectionately buries his face into her shoulder, refusing to ever let her go. Staring in stunned silence, Lady Lifey's eyes widen as a deep blush creeps across her delicate features. Gazing at her with intense affection, the silver-haired Lord Oliver gently touches his flushed face and boldly confesses, "I love you." Desperately trying to rationalize the overwhelming situation, she begs, "Lord Oliver, those feelings are please calm down. Because of the love potion." Refusing to be easily dismissed, he leans closer and fiercely argues, "Why won't you believe that it's how I truly feel? Your love potion just amplifies existing feelings, right?" Moving with predatory grace, Oliver swiftly pins the flustered Lifey against the ornate sofa, trapping her beneath his intense and unyielding gaze. Startled by his sudden and aggressive advance, she lets out a terrified squeak, crying "Eek!" as she tightly grips his arm in defense. Oliver's piercing eyes lock onto hers, his handsome face hovering dangerously close as he prepares to bare his soul completely. He softly lists the things he deeply adores about her, murmuring about her clumsy charm, her inability to act smoothly despite having no confidence, and how she never complains. Caressing her warm cheek, he praises her scent and the warmth of her lips, causing her to frantically wonder, "Aren't you mistaking me for someone else?" Tracing his own lip thoughtfully, he confidently affirms his devotion, whispering, "But all of it." As he reiterates, "I love you," she finds herself captivated by his raw emotion, breathlessly thinking, "If this person loved me like this." Closing the distance entirely, Oliver pleads with unwavering and desperate devotion, "Even if you can't remember me, just stay by my side." Their faces draw incredibly close, the romantic tension thick as they hover mere inches from a passionate embrace. Time seems to stand completely still as their lips brush, both nearly consumed by the overwhelming spell of the intimate moment. Snapping violently back to reality, she quickly covers his mouth with her hand, begging, "Please save anything beyond this for when you're not under the influence of the love potion." Oliver's eyes widen in genuine surprise as her palm presses firmly against his lips, halting his romantic advance instantly. Panting softly, Oliver's breathless expression reveals the profound physical toll the magical infatuation is taking on his exhausted body. Suddenly, a sharply dressed man named Rune appears from behind and strikes Oliver's neck with a swift chop, prompting her to shriek, "Rune!" in utter shock. Relieved but frantic to control the situation, she immediately commands her loyal companion, screaming, "Now!" Catching the collapsing nobleman with ease, Rune calmly assesses the chaotic room and states, "Whoa, first, put him to sleep." Summoning a complex magical circle over Oliver's unconscious form, Rune activates a powerful cleansing spell, shouting, "Detoxify," to purge the potion's effects. As the magical light fades, Rune cheerfully declares, "All right," while Lifey slumps onto the floor, utterly exhausted by the draining ordeal. Observing her disheveled state, Rune playfully scolds his master, sighing, "You really are something, milady, you somehow manage to mess up at the most critical moments." While dragging Oliver's limp body back onto the plush sofa, Rune continues his relentless teasing, adding, "Well, even so, even I think it's strange." Rune analyzes the strange magical reaction with a smirk, noting, "That love potion worked remarkably well on Lord Oliver." As Rune chuckles at the absolute absurdity of the event, she glares at him and snaps, "This really isn't the time to be laughing, it's true." Lost in deep, nervous thought, she gently touches her lip and wonders, could it be that for it to work this well? Her troubled mind drifts away to a beautiful, romantic vision of herself and Oliver sitting peacefully together amidst a lush field of blooming tulips. Pacing frantically across the floor, she tries to fiercely deny the reality, rationalizing, "The love potion must have been a failure. Maybe I messed up the mixture. There's no way the love potion should have worked that well on me." Clutching her head in pure, unfiltered panic, she screams out loud, "Because it doesn't make sense otherwise." "Ah!" Trying to offer a much simpler explanation, Rune gently asks, "Maybe Lord Oliver already liked you to begin with?" She completely rejects the ridiculous idea, arguing, "You don't fall that hard for someone you've just met, and it makes more sense to think those words were meant for someone else he likes." Leaning casually against the couch with a knowing smile, Rune challenges her stubbornness, asking, "You're really going with that? Can't you reconsider somehow?" Trembling with deeply conflicting emotions, she tragically realizes, even though I know it logically when Lord Oliver treats me that way, and yet I'm so easy? Burying her bright red face in her hands in sheer embarrassment, she softly admits to herself, I didn't hate it at all. The scene shifts dramatically to the exterior of a massive, intricately designed Gothic castle towering under a bright, cloudy sky. A polite, unexpected voice interrupts the quiet atmosphere of the hall, calling out, "Excuse me, miss?" Startled by the sudden address, the young woman points to herself in confusion and questions, "Me?" The unseen attendant confirms her polite inquiry, instructing, "Yes, once you're ready, please head to the salon." Walking slowly down the grand hallway, she internally debates her bizarre situation, noting, if it were Lord Oliver, he'd probably confess his feelings, and I haven't met the Demon King in this life yet. Rune is always by my side. Standing nervously before a large set of ornate doors, she grips the heavy handle and wonders, who in the world could it be? Entering the lavishly decorated room, she announces her arrival with a polite and formal, "Thank you for waiting." Sparkling magical dust dances beautifully in the air as the grand staircase and luxurious interior of the majestic salon are fully revealed. From across the expansive room, a sharp, aristocratic voice immediately observes, "You don't look well at all." An elegant noblewoman delicately sips her expensive tea, her dark hair cascading down her regal shoulders as she coldly watches the newcomer. Sitting perfectly poised in luxurious chairs, the two formidable ladies greet her as one smoothly says, "Lady Lifey, good day to you, would you care to rest a little longer?" A sudden, violent flash of memory triggers in her mind, her eye widening in sheer terror amidst a flurry of ethereal petals. Recognizing the two dangerous noblewomen sitting right before her, she gasps their names in absolute horror, "Lady Aurelia? Lady Sonia?" Standing completely frozen in the opulent salon, a crushing wave of dread washes over her as she realizes, that's right, I'd completely forgotten because of the love potion uproar. The full, terrifying weight of her past mistake crashes down upon her as she remembers the horrifying truth. I used dark magic in front of the two of them. Trembling with dread, Lady Lifey assumes the noblewomen believe she used dark magic to deceive Lord Oliver and snatch the position of his fiancé. Overwhelmed by her dire assumptions, she feels like crying as she braces for them to ruthlessly keep her in check. Startled by her visible distress, one of the elegant ladies leans forward in concern and calls out her name. Misunderstanding her panic entirely, they gently assume she is simply feeling uneasy after newly arriving from a foreign country. Beaming with unexpected warmth, the noblewoman sweetly assures Lifey that they are entirely there for her support. Stepping forward to take her hand, Lady Sonia kindly offers to escort the overwhelmed girl back to her room to rest. Blinking in pure disbelief, Lifey stares blankly at the two notoriously fierce women acting with such gentle care. Utterly baffled by the bizarre turn of events, she frantically wonders what on earth is happening as they gently lift her from the chair. Unable to hide her absolute confusion, she finally stammers out a question asking why the two of them are actually here. Smiling warmly, they express deep interest in her and cheerfully invite her to a magic lecture to properly thank her for yesterday's actions. Still bracing for rejection, Lifey cautiously reminds them that she used black magic and asks if they aren't terrified of her. Chuckling gracefully, Lady Aurelia declares that anyone would grow to like someone as adorable as her, expressing only deep gratitude instead of fear. Spellbound by their genuine acceptance, Lifey gazes at them with sparkling eyes as her crushing anxiety instantly evaporates. Breathing a tiny sigh of relief, she begins to process the miraculous reality that she hasn't made terrifying enemies yet. Deciding not to overwhelm her further, the noblewomen politely excuse themselves and promise to visit again once her health improves. Gazing after them in stunned awe, she realizes their incredibly kind words felt meant for someone completely different. Desperate to confirm reality, she frantically calls out for Rune as he calmly steps up beside her. Teasing her relentlessly, Rune gleefully points out that she finally managed to make real friends in high society. Pinching his cheek hard enough to make him yelp, she joyfully realizes this incredible development isn't just a dream. Clenching her fists with overwhelming excitement, her face lights up with a massive, teary-eyed smile of pure triumph. Shifting the topic smoothly, Rune reminds her that her original plan was to turn Lord Oliver down without ruining their relationship. Smirking mischievously, he suggests that her magical mishap might result in Oliver falling even harder for her than before. Flushed and flustered, she completely denies the ridiculous notion that the handsome lord could ever truly be into her. Paralyzed by a sudden wave of self-doubt, she clutches her chest and wonders if there is genuinely something wrong with her mind. Descending the grand staircase in a pristine uniform, Lord Oliver suddenly appears and locks his gentle gaze on her. Catching her breath, she quickly informs the approaching nobleman that the two ladies just left a moment ago. Looking slightly concerned, Oliver checks to ensure that the formidable noblewomen didn't cause her any trouble. Smiling awkwardly, she reassures him that everything went perfectly well and they miraculously became friends. Stopping in his tracks, Oliver's eyes widen with a mix of mild surprise and deep, affectionate amusement. Blushing fiercely under his warm gaze, she puffs out her cheeks and defensively insists that they are indeed her friends. Rambling nervously, she tries to justify that having friends is perfectly normal and expected in high society. Staring at her with profound fondness, Oliver completely melts her defenses by calling her newly formed friendships absolutely amazing. Closing the distance slightly, he softly expresses his genuine joy at the thought of more people coming to understand her true worth. Flashing a breathtakingly tender smile, he admits that seeing her accepted makes him incredibly happy too. Suddenly struck by his overwhelming kindness, her face erupts in a massive blush as the mortifying memory of yesterday's potion incident violently resurfaces. Frantically trying to clear the air, she bows her head and babbles out a desperate apology for the massive misunderstanding. To her absolute shock, Oliver bows deeply as well, apologizing for failing to hold back his intense feelings and accidentally hurting her. Rendered completely speechless, she privately agonizes over the terrifying truth that she didn't completely hate his bold advances. Staring downward, Oliver gravely mentions hearing from Lara that Leify already holds someone else incredibly important in her heart. Locking his piercing eyes onto hers with absolute certainty, he fiercely declares that his own romantic feelings for her are no mistake. Staring up into his unwavering gaze, she feels her heartbeat skyrocket as his raw, unfiltered devotion completely paralyzes her mind. Echoing through her racing thoughts, she remembers his desperate plea to stay by his side even if she couldn't remember him. Piecing the impossible puzzle together, she realizes his tragic devotion makes no sense since they have never met before. Spiraling into total panic, she frantically questions if his passionate words were actually meant for someone entirely different. Hiding his deeply flushed face behind his hand, Oliver winces as she internally agonizes over the fact that she has never even visited his country before. Unable to bear his own vulnerability, he begs her to forget his cruel desperation to suppress his overflowing emotions. Shaking uncontrollably from the sheer weight of his intense confession, Leify finds herself entirely unable to form a coherent response. Narrowing his eyes with desperate intensity, Oliver forcefully commands her to just forget the entire overwhelming ordeal. Pushed to her absolute emotional limit, she screams out that forgetting is completely impossible. Swooping in with terrifying speed, Oliver leans dangerously close, causing her to shriek in pure panic as he stubbornly repeats his demand. Auravel finds it childish yet undeniably cute how Lord Oliver gets so worked up and begs. Floating nearby, a third companion reminds Lord Oliver that they don't need to act like lovers since there are only 3 of them present. Oliver drops his desperate facade as his expression hardens into a deadly serious gaze. Turning to face the seated Auravel, Oliver concedes her point with a quiet agreement. He frankly admits he finally understands she doesn't feel anything for him. Flushed and gripping her chest, Auravel nervously rationalizes her pounding heart as a mere symptom of her having zero experience with love. She confidently anchors her racing thoughts on the unquestionable fact that Leify's magic potions are absolutely top class. Staring at Oliver's intense visage, she silently wonders what that serious gaze has been focused on all this time. The name Raleigh echoes through the void of her shifting memories. A vision of the past materializes, revealing Leify's previous life as Raleigh Eliana Wickham sitting beside Auravel's previous life as Vincent Luca Dilk. Discussing potion vials, someone points out how terrifyingly easy it is to make a lethal mistake when the only difference is a shaped lid. They emphasize that this specific magic is meant for direct use rather than something to carelessly give to someone else. Oliver forcefully declares he already promised to take care of being her friend, lover, and absolutely everything. Auravel jolts backward, completely blindsided by his overwhelming intensity. Sweating under the pressure, she frantically wonders if he will try to change the subject next. Her face burns bright red as she stammers silently, overwhelmed by the sudden confession. Someone questions if the weird-smelling black drink tastes strangely bitter. They confidently add that they already knew she liked the bizarre brew despite its oddities. Vincent tenderly cups Raleigh's cheek, sincerely declaring just how completely adorable she truly is. Raleigh recoils in disbelief, utterly shocked that he would say something so sweet to someone feared as a notorious wicked woman. Leaning intimately close, Vincent whispers that as long as he understands her it is enough, fiercely wanting no one else to know her true self. Their eyes lock in a breathless moment of profound connection. Vincent pulls her into a deep, protective embrace beneath the shadows of the stone garden wall. Shimmering magic dust dances around the lush foliage hiding their intimate moment. He passionately questions how anyone could ever fear and doubt someone so profoundly pure and lovely. Dismissing her detractors, he insists those who cannot see her worth aren't worth befriending while praising her potions as unmatched top-tier creations. Raleigh violently objects, screaming that a beloved person like him wouldn't understand, and strictly forbids him from ever drinking that love potion in front of her. Her voice trembles as she admits her terrifying fear that her genuine feelings could be artificially overwritten. Frantically waving her hands, she stammers a denial about the true nature of the love potion she makes. A silent, breathless pause hangs heavily in the air. Snapping forcefully back to the present, Aurivel yells out in sheer frustration. She hesitantly calls out Lord Oliver's name to break his momentary distraction. Oliver swiftly apologizes and pivots the conversation to reveal the serious second reason he came to see her. He grimly brings up the disturbing memory loss cases currently plaguing Dystria. Aurivel quickly connects this to the second potential match secretly arranged by her former fiancé and father. Stepping closer, Oliver explains that memories can be taken as the price for a curse, deeply concerning him as a curse specialist. He points out the unnatural anomaly of a girl being liked far beyond normal bounds, directly questioning what is happening with Leifey's younger sister. Furthermore, he notes that Leifey's father has also been acting incredibly suspiciously lately. Relief washes over Aurivel as she realizes Lord Oliver senses the exact same sinister presence she does. Oliver confidently reveals he was the only one to notice Aria's charm magic because his immense power makes him entirely immune to it. He warns that ordinary people will only notice the enchantment once the insidious spell grows significantly stronger. Tracing the curse's path, he explains how it corrupted the chief magician before rapidly spreading from the blessed nobles to ordinary citizens. By the time society recognized the danger, she had already charmed everyone around her, leaving only one person entirely unchanged. Standing resolutely in the Grand Library, Oliver reiterates the terrifying reality that the influence has already fully infected the ordinary populace. Connecting the horrifying dots, Aurivel declares Aria is the saint of enchantment, desperately hoping Oliver will trust her insight. Oliver blinks in pure bewilderment, completely sideswiped by her bold and sudden claim. Taking charge, Aurivel states they must investigate the memory loss first, knowing an expert on the subject, though calling this being human might be entirely inaccurate. She drops the massive bombshell that her contact is actually a literal demon king. Plunging into a mystical spatial rift, a majestic figure floats gracefully upward through the glowing ether. The otherworldly being opens his eyes, offering Lord Oliver an unervingly calm morning greeting. Buttoning his cuffs, Lord Oliver calmly asks the blonde woman if the investigation into the life of the Saint of Charm is finally finished. A gentle, knowing smile graces her lips as she simply confirms with a soft yes. She confidently assures him that the entire matter was handled completely without any trouble. Magical dust dances through the air as Lord Oliver gratefully receives the glowing, sealed document from her outstretched hand. Frowning with lingering concern, she nervously questions if it was truly okay to tell them about Lady Leifey's top-class magic potions before they could even fully understand the situation. Stepping closer, she points out that employing such manipulative, preemptive tactics is completely unlike his usual straightforward demeanor. Oliver smirks with absolute confidence, declaring the girl is clever and firmly believing his planted words will stay with her to gradually take effect. Relieved by his cunning foresight, the woman chuckles and praises him as quite the strategist, admitting she worried for Thing. Oliver shifts his intense focus downward, silently analyzing the freshly delivered intelligence report with unwavering scrutiny. His brow furrows deeply as he grimly mutters that the Saint of Charm's situation might quickly turn into something incredibly troublesome. The scene shifts to a grand manor, where a bright-eyed Easton warmly greets his great-grandmother and asks how she has been. The elderly woman looks up with a tender smile, graciously thanking Easton for his much-appreciated visit. Resting comfortably by the roaring fireplace, she kindly asks if he can fetch her the usual potion since she is almost out, a request he respectfully accepts. Reminiscing fondly, she notes the potion always cures her colds quickly and mentions that Arya used to visit her often, wondering aloud if the girl is doing well. She continues her heartfelt praise, describing Arya as a remarkably gentle and kind girl even though she is so often hidden in her sister's shadow. Beaming with grandmotherly affection, she insists that the sweet girl is a perfectly fine lady who suits him incredibly well. A sharp glint flashes in Easton's widened eye as a deeply complex, unreadable expression suddenly overtakes his handsome features. The grand architectural facade of Duke Tarlant's majestic estate looms proudly across the sprawling kingdom of Distria. A towering, glittering mountain of exquisitely wrapped gift boxes stacked precariously high dominates the lavishly decorated room. Arya clasps her hands together in sheer delight, profusely thanking Lord Easton for showering her with all these magnificent gifts. Tilting her head with playful curiosity, she sweetly questions what could have possibly brought on this sudden, overwhelming display of affection. Easton gently explains that before losing his memory he probably never gave Lifey any gifts despite caring for her, so this grand gesture is meant to make up for all of that past neglect. Staring directly into her sparkling eyes, he boldly and without hesitation declares his profound love for Arya. Pulling her into a warm embrace, he whispers that seeing her smile makes him endlessly happy, prompting her to giggle and return his sweet confession. However, as he holds her close, a subtle shadow of doubt darkens Easton's previously enamored gaze. He mentally catalogues the many letters scattered in the room, realizing those missives and the magical potions meant to care for the body were undoubtedly meant for Arya. Breaking his tense silence, he casually asks his beloved Arya to tell him more about the intriguing new magical potion mentioned in those very letters. Arya blinks back at him with a perfectly blank, utterly confused expression etched across her delicate face. Pressing his subtle interrogation, Easton reasons that since her sister Lifey is skilled at making magical potions, it is completely clear that Arya can make them too. He strategically drops the fact that the Duke of Tarlant himself proudly boasted about his daughter being an undeniably excellent magical apothecary. Flustered and waving her hands defensively, Arya insists she could never make something like a magical potion and frantically deflects the praise onto her sister Lifey. A nervous drop of sweat rolls down Easton's cheek as he quietly stammers that her sudden denial absolutely does not add up with the facts. Scrambling to recover, Arya cheerfully declares she is still thrilled he chose her, while quickly clarifying that the specific magic potion that woke him up was definitely made by her sister. Desperate to change the subject, she forcefully reiterates her love for him with an overly bright, practiced smile. Easton stares downward in heavy contemplation, deeply disturbed as he questions if the girl he loves really cannot do anything magical at all. A horrifying realization strikes his core as he mentally wonders if those letters and carefully crafted potions were actually not from Arya in the first place. Testing her memory, he casually remarks that his great-grandmother is currently spending her later years at a castle situated conveniently near the Tarlant Duchy. He deliberately emphasizes the crucial detail that his beloved great-grandmother does not live anywhere near the bustling capital. Falling perfectly into his verbal trap, Arya claps her hands excitedly and innocently wonders what kind of castle it could be, eagerly claiming she would love to visit it sometime. Easton's heart drops as his great-grandmother's recent words echo in his mind, distinctly recalling her saying Arya used to visit the castle quite often until recently. Expertly masking his spiraling suspicions, Easton abruptly excuses himself for the day, promising to invite her to the royal palace next time and politely asking her to wait for him. Blissfully unaware of the catastrophic slip-up, Arya beams a flawless, radiant smile and sing-songs a cheerful goodbye. As Easton walks away, his face is cast in dark, ominous shadows, paralyzed by a deeply strange and terrifying feeling gripping his chest. Trembling slightly, he frantically wonders why, just moments ago, his mind was absolutely consumed by the unshakable desire to protect her smile. Arya's voice suddenly cuts through the tension as she casually calls out to Lord Easton, pivoting back to his earlier question about the mysterious letters. Her tone turns remarkably cold as she explicitly orders him to dispose of anything sealed with pink wax, claiming she firmly believes those items are from her banished sister, Lifey. Feigning sorrow, she drops her gaze and softly laments that knowing she won't see Lifey again after she leaves the country makes her feel incredibly lonely, despite her supposed love for her. She presses her delicate frame intimately against his royal uniform, weaponizing her perceived fragility to maintain her suffocating hold over his wavering heart. Staring up at him, Arya's impossibly wide eyes gleam with a chilling, artificial innocence that entirely masks the twisted darkness brewing beneath her flawless facade. With a horrifyingly hollow expression, she bluntly whispers her true, venomous desire to completely erase everything with a tangible form from around her. Gazing with an expression of dazed wonder, the young lord softly exhales a dreamy sigh as he fully absorbs the tender moment. Cradling his tearful fiancée, he ruthlessly dismisses the past by suggesting she discard her former fiancé's letters unread, declaring her lingering attachment both pitiful and improper. Struck by a sudden surge of overwhelming emotion, he stares ahead with a serious gaze, fiercely desiring to pull her close to his heart. Standing quietly in his ornate uniform, he clutches his decorated sash while deeply lost in troubled, silent contemplation. Outside the sprawling and magnificent castle estate, he catches his breath in bewilderment, desperately trying to shake off his distracting, unbidden thoughts. Leaning heavily over his cluttered, chaotic desk, he realizes with a sinking feeling that Lady Lyfie has not sent him a single letter. Pondering near a finely crafted wooden dresser, he reflects on the undeniable truth that she was officially bound to him as his fiancée. Glancing toward the extravagant bedroom, he rationalizes that their official status should never be treated as a shameful secret meant to be hidden. Staring down at his tall boots, he admits his reluctance to let anyone else view those hidden letters, fearing they would be misconstrued if he completely lost his memory. Searching with determined intent, the young nobleman carefully inspects the towering book-filled shelves in his private study. With a sharp and unyielding gaze, he continues his meticulous hunt for the truth hidden within the quiet room. His persistence pays off as a concealed, rectangular compartment seamlessly slides open from the polished surface of the bookshelf. Inside the secret glowing box, he finally discovers the heavily sealed envelopes he had been seeking all along. Shock washes over him as he scrutinizes the mysterious sender, utterly baffled by the meaning behind this cryptic, unearthed correspondence. Dropping the letter to the floor in absolute disbelief, he steps back as the undeniable weight of the revelation hits him. The letter's contents expose Arya's desperate plea for friendship and her manipulative confession of merely wanting to support Lord Easton out of concern for her sister's marriage. Collapsing to his knees in utter dismay, he reads the sickening admission of settling for second place, realizing this viciously contradicts everything he was ever told. Slumping heavily into his wooden chair, he questions the entirety of his past, wondering if the claim that Lyfie divided them was just another elaborate lie. A loyal servant approaches the brooding Lord Easton, bowing respectfully to ask if his presence was requested. Commanding with absolute authority, Easton vehemently forbids Arya from entering his presence until he explicitly allows it. The scene shifts to a dazzling, sunlit room filled with opulent furniture and grand chandeliers casting ethereal, floating reflections. Reflecting on her incredible skills, it is openly acknowledged that the magical concoctions crafted by Lyfie are of unparalleled, top-notch quality. Lord Oliver fully recognizes that this specific love potion is brilliantly designed to dramatically magnify a person's underlying affection for someone else. Thrashing excitedly on her bed alongside her friends, the blonde girl squeals that his high praise for her potion might actually hint at genuine, blossoming affection. Interrupting the romantic daydream, Lyfie urgently warns the man lounging on the windowsill that Lord Oliver already holds someone dearly in his heart. Unfazed, the man casually replies that referring to her in such a brazen manner will surely incur Lara's violent wrath. His expression softening into a tender gaze, he longs for someone who could genuinely accept a sincere confession of love. He distinctly recalls Lara speaking ominously about an intense, suffocatingly heavy kind of love that binds people together. He gazes out with quiet hope, believing that such a profound connection must exist somewhere in this vast world. Resting her chin on her arms, the young woman looks deeply conflicted as she processes the overwhelming emotional conversation. Frustrated, she reminds herself not to be swayed by sweet words, fiercely insisting that their bond is nothing more than a strict contractual relationship. Leaning calmly against the windowpane, he advises her to stop overthinking romance and simply go with the natural flow of her feelings. Determined to test her boundaries, she points firmly and orders Rune to stand exactly where she indicates. Complying with hesitant confusion, Rune takes a nervous step forward, asking if this is what she intended. With sudden, theatrical passion, she dramatically lunges forward to falsely confess her love to a thoroughly shocked Rune. Flustered and panicking, She demands his help practicing while he loudly questions the absolute absurdity of her chaotic methods. Suspicious of her motives, Rune asks if she is attempting to manipulate him merely to decipher Lord Oliver's deeply hidden feelings. She frantically denies the accusation, pleading with him not to misunderstand because she desperately wishes to avoid being scolded by the Lord. Still reeling from the bizarre stunt, Rune indignantly asks if her fake, jarring confession stems from a secret hatred toward him. Standing completely still with a hidden face, she confesses her deep fear of confronting reality, admitting she does not even know how to navigate her own complex emotions or discover who is truly important. Rune watches her with a mixture of exasperation and concern, quietly noting that her constant anxiety is driving these erratic outbursts. Sighing at her familiar spiral of self-doubt, he mentally prepares himself for yet another round of emotional reassurance. Gently patting her head to soothe her racing mind, he comforts her by insisting she doesn't need to overcomplicate things. Having calmed her down, he smoothly shifts the atmosphere, softly calling her name to bring her back to the present moment. Standing gracefully beside an ornate grandfather clock, he proposes that they finally begin getting ready for their upcoming departure. A breathtaking, sprawling view of a massive, snow-capped mountain range sets the dramatic stage for their next grand journey. A close-up of their sturdy boots emphasizes the steady, determined steps they take as they march together through the wild grass. The party of 4 adventurers walks confidently into the sun-dappled forest, their backs turned to the viewer as they venture forth. Taking in the familiar surroundings, one of them remarks on the nostalgic feel of the road, anticipating their long-awaited reunion with the Demon King. Casting a subtle, backward glance over their shoulder, a lingering sense of mystery is left hanging in the air as they proceed forward. Noticing a sudden shift in the atmosphere, Leify glances back to ask if something is wrong. Observing his unusual calmness, she points out that a crown prince rarely visits without a proper escort. Walking confidently through the sunlit forest, Oliver confesses that he is actually quite nervous about meeting the Demon King. Maintaining his composed expression, he explains that showing his true feelings would negatively affect everyone around him. Offering gentle reassurance, Leify remarks that the Demon King is probably just as kind as he looks. Rune stretches his arms behind his head with a relaxed smile, trailing slightly behind the conversing pair. A flurry of black feathers suddenly drifts down from the sky, signaling a mysterious arrival. A shadowy avian guide appears, confirming their identity and instructing them to proceed to the top floor. The party marches steadily through a grand stone archway into the imposing castle grounds. Ascending the elegant staircase, Leify closely follows the dark bird as it leads the way. Riding a gilded, cage-like elevator, the group steadily ascends through a towering shaft illuminated by magical lights. Oliver and Leify stand quietly before an immense set of double doors, bracing themselves for the encounter. Gazing at the strange guide, Leify notes silently that it doesn't seem nervous in the slightest. A sudden chime echoes through the hall as the magical barrier responds to their presence. The massive doors swing wide open, revealing a shadowed, expansive corridor ahead. Stepping forward with determination, a polished shoe breaches the threshold of the dark room. The companions file into the grand hallway, keeping their eyes locked on the dark raven flying ahead. Holding a softly glowing lantern, Demon King Silas steps out of the shadows to welcome Leify Quinn-Tarlant. Oliver immediately steps close to Leify, projecting a protective and steadfast aura. Offering a polite smile, the towering Demon King reiterates his gratitude for her arrival. The imposing figure stands fully revealed as Demon King Silas, exuding quiet authority. Beaming with sheer delight, Leify excitedly exclaims that he actually remembered her name. Silas smoothly affirms her statement, expressing genuine happiness at their reunion. Trailing off in thought, the Demon King wonders aloud if he should consider her a benefactor or a friend. Gesturing proudly toward her companion, Leify eagerly introduces Lord Oliver as her fiancé. Utterly caught off guard, Silas recoils with a visible jolt of shock. Staring in pure disbelief, the Demon King loudly questions the sudden revelation of a fiancé. Stepping forward with absolute confidence, Oliver formally introduces himself as Oliver Luke Shinwood. The two men firmly shake hands, bridging the gap between their respective worlds. Leify watches the historic handshake with sparkling, hopeful eyes. Radiating pride, she joyfully notes that the two met solely because she introduced them. Clasping her hands together in pure bliss, she happily sighs that this entire moment feels like a dream. Silas quickly shoots down her romanticized view, dryly stating it is nothing that dramatic. The scene transitions to an opulent, sunlit room beautifully arranged for a formal gathering. Settling at the table, Lifey observes the bizarre tea party lineup consisting of orange juice, wine, and coffee. Glancing at his chosen beverage, she curiously asks Lord Oliver if he consumes wine. Oliver calmly declines the alcohol, explaining that it simply doesn't agree with his constitution. Stunned by the black coffee provided without a word, Lifey wildly speculates if the Demon King possesses mind-reading powers. Leaning forward intensely, Silas abruptly demands to know if the two are already acquainted. A sudden spray of liquid breaks the tension as someone dramatically spits out their drink in shock. Silas swiftly attempts to recover his composure, insisting that this is definitely their first meeting. Sweating nervously, the Demon King forcibly steers the conversation toward the main issue at hand. He grimly reveals that two people around him have suffered unexplained memory loss, completely forgetting him and his sister. Frustrated by the lack of investigation, Silas declares his strong suspicion that a larger conspiracy is underway. Oliver crosses his arms and firmly agrees with the Demon King's dark assessment of the situation. Pacing across the polished floor, Silas notes that information in her letter originally tipped him off. He approaches a large ornate cabinet, announcing that the answer lies directly ahead. Opening the glowing white doors, the Demon King directs their attention to a specific item on the shelf. Lifey stares intently into the cabinet, her expression transforming into one of complete focus and curiosity. Locking her eyes on the object, she demands to know the exact nature of the mysterious jewelry box. As the Demon King, collecting and displaying these cursed boxes is a crucial part of his job. He explains to Lifey that requests for forbidden spells come directly to him, demanding a specific price. That chilling price extracted for such dark magic is always human memories. Shocked, Lifey realizes he is directly involved in all the recent cases of widespread amnesia. He bluntly confirms that her horrified assumption is completely correct. Bowing his head gracefully, the Demon King apologizes, never expecting this dark reality to trouble Lifey so deeply. Visibly distressed, Lifey demands to know if Prince Easton's stolen memories are kept inside those very boxes too. Denying it, he reveals he actually took 45 years' worth of memories from the second son of House Smith from birth. Flabbergasted by the revelation, Lifey and her companion reel at the sheer age of this sacrificed second son. Desperate for clarity, they question what specific kind of forbidden spell he actually cast to cause this. Standing beside Prince Easton, they listen closely as the sinister details finally begin to unravel. The dark magic was specifically designed to steal Easton's memories regarding his fiancée and her younger sister. Targeting royalty demands a heavy toll, making 45 years of memories a brutally fair price to pay. The horrific implication hangs heavy in the air as they try to piece together the remaining puzzle. A malicious third party orchestrated the deal, sacrificing the second son's memories to erase the young ladies from Easton's mind. Utterly confused, someone questions the true purpose behind such a convoluted and cruel scheme. Suspicions rapidly arise regarding Aria's involvement and the baffling choice to use the Smith family's second son as a sacrifice. The Demon King begins to explain the bizarre bureaucratic process for handling such unique and dark requests. He shockingly reveals that a simple roulette wheel decides the fate of the involved parties. A single spin of this magical wheel summons the name of the most suitable payer for the spell's cost. The mystical mechanism even precisely dictates the exact type of memories required to fuel the dark transaction. Expressing clear distaste for the ancient system, the Demon King admits he loathes this old rule just as much as they do. A heavy wave of pity washes over them for the unfortunate second son caught in the magical crossfire. Lamenting the second son's terrible luck, they acknowledge the tragic misfortune of his name landing on the roulette. Presenting the ornate box holding the second son's memories, he claims breaking it will undo the theft. Gripping the box tightly, Lifey realizes she has the power to finally help the wronged man. However, the Demon King warns that shattering the box will also completely revert the forbidden spell's effects. Everything will instantly return to how it was right before the dark magic was unleashed. With the box destroyed, Prince Easton's lost memories will inevitably flood back into his mind. Lifey freezes, her face twisted in dread as she fiercely declares she doesn't want Easton to ever remember her. Haunted by his past words, she admits her deepest desire is for him to forget her for eternity. Prince Easton gently reaches out and places his hands on her, a ghost of their past connection lingering in the air. A provocative voice asks if she truly doesn't want to watch Easton remember everything and burn with deep regret. Trembling slightly, she firmly rejects the idea, knowing a restored memory would only spawn further chaos and trouble. Staring intensely at her, he challenges whether she is truly willing to abandon the innocent second son to permanent amnesia. Cornered by guilt, she stammers a denial and finally resolves to smash the cursed jewelry box. Before proceeding, she demands to know the identity of the mastermind who orchestrated this twisted nightmare. Bound by a strict confidentiality rule, the Demon King refuses to speak, warning that breaking it would physically harm his own body. Unsurprised by the supernatural red tape, she sighs and accepts that he cannot betray his magical contract. Realizing the contractor foolishly forgot to specify a term, they discover a loophole allowing them to safely break the box themselves. Confident in her specialty, she knows restoring Easton's memories will finally drag the hidden scheme into the blinding light. Standing resolutely before the cursed object, she prepares herself to shatter it completely. With a violent and echoing crack, the ornate box shatters into countless glowing fragments across the floor. Prince Easton gasps in sudden and jarring shock as the magical shockwave crashes over him. Panicking at his sudden reaction, they immediately cry out to check if Prince Easton is all right. Clutching his face in overwhelming disbelief, Easton stammers a weak confirmation that he is okay. Collapsing back against the grand pillar, he grips his head as blinding flashes of the past assault his mind. A torrential flood of vibrant and fragmented memories concerning his fiancée and her sister violently rips through his consciousness. Staring blankly ahead, he whispers in absolute awe that his stolen memories are rapidly flooding back. Seeing the painful reality of the past unfold in his mind's eye, he finally recognizes the devastating truth of the conspiracy. Prince Easton admits to an off-screen listener that the true culprits are Arya and himself, realizing this horrifying reality is completely different from Arya's lies. Crushed beneath the agonizing weight of his restored memories, Easton recalls holding Arya while his mind violently reels from the devastating impact of his past actions. Trembling in a cold sweat, he clutches his face and desperately questions the terrifying severity of what he has actually done. The dark realization dawns on him that Arya deliberately trapped her own sister, condemning them both in a twisted and absolutely insane scheme. A desperate gasp escapes him as he wonders why no one stood up for Leify or said a single word while this nightmare unfolded around them. A sinister, seeping feeling creeps into his heart, making him feel as though an unseen magical force is actively trying to control his mind. Gripped by a terrifying internal struggle, the horrified prince clutches his head and questions what is happening to his own mind. The scene dramatically shifts to a vast, majestic mountain towering under a bright, cloud-swept sky. Back in the opulent room, Leify stands quietly in the foreground while Lord Oliver and the Demon King observe the deeply troubled prince at the table. Turning her back to the others, Leify approaches a grand ornate glass cabinet filled with mysterious and glowing treasures. Gazing in absolute awe at the beautiful, colorful jewelry boxes, she struggles to believe these exquisite items are the actual prices paid for forbidden spells. Examining the display closely, she softly notes that some of the mystical containers perfectly match the color of her own eyes. Clutching her dress with a heavy heart, Leify confesses that looking at these crystallized memories makes her feel profoundly sad. Suddenly, Lord Oliver's sharp voice cuts through the quiet, strictly warning her not to touch the dangerous artifacts without permission. Startled but cheerful, she turns back with a bright smile and eagerly agrees with his firm command. Flustered and slightly defensive, she quickly explains she only admired a specific box because its color matched her eyes perfectly. Lord Oliver stares at her with an intensely solemn and unreadable expression, the silence stretching heavily between them. Pausing in confusion, Leify looks back at him, sensing a sudden and palpable shift in the atmosphere. Nervously breaking the tension, she stammers and asks if she accidentally said something weird about the box. Focusing on the glowing amber box, she admires its lovely hue and compares it directly to Rune's captivating eyes. A shocked gasp escapes Lord Oliver as he reacts viscerally to her casual yet incredibly intimate comparison. Quickly recovering his composure, Oliver smoothly suggests they head back since the Demon King is waiting. Gently guiding her by the shoulder, Lord Oliver leads Leify back toward the center of the grand room where the others wait. A soft, mysterious smile graces Oliver's face, his eyes gleaming with hidden affection as they walk together. The narrative shifts to a serene, sunlit garden gazebo where Lord Oliver and Leify enjoy a peaceful moment surrounded by lush foliage. A breathtaking, towering castle dominates the landscape, its grand and intricate spires reaching proudly toward the bright heavens. Relaxing in the ornate gazebo, Oliver casually leans against the railing while Leify sits quietly by the elegant table. Leify stares in absolute disgust at a letter from Prince Easton, where he pitifully apologizes and blames his cheating entirely on his amnesia. Furious, she dramatically crumples the pathetic letter on the table, fiercely declaring she will never fall for his excuses again. Leaning back lazily, Lord Oliver accurately guesses the letter is Easton's cowardly attempt to announce his returned memories. Clenching the paper, Leify sees that Easton's attempt to use the amnesia as a scapegoat for his unforgivable cheating is entirely unacceptable. Teasingly, Oliver leans in and playfully suggests she might still forgive the prince if he offered a proper apology. Springing up in furious denial, Leify shouts that she would never forgive him, reminding Oliver of the sheer hell she endured every single day. Pacing aggressively, she completely rejects the idea of accepting his apology, her dress swirling with her volatile anger. Unfazed, Oliver gently challenges her resolve, asking if her stance would hold even if Prince Easton broke down and cried. Brushing off the hypothetical tears, she bluntly states that dealing with a crying prince sounds like a massive hassle. Amused by her pragmatic response, Lord Oliver warmly compliments her kindness, leaving Leify slightly flustered. His expression darkening, Oliver coldly asserts that tears cannot buy forgiveness from someone as incredibly shallow as Prince Easton. Surprised by his sudden hostility, Leify points out that his eyes aren't smiling at all despite his calm tone. Gently taking her hands in his, he agrees, prompting her to note how rare it is to hear him speak so viciously about someone. He intensely reveals his deep anger over how Easton treated her, fueled by a blazing jealousy toward the former fiancé. Blushing furiously, Leify stares up at him, caught completely off guard by his sudden and raw confession of jealousy. He tenderly grasps her trembling hands tighter, a heavy and intensely romantic tension settling over the quiet garden. Before the intimate moment can escalate, he steps back and addresses her formally as Lady Leify, dramatically cutting the tension. Gesturing smoothly toward the pathway, Lord Oliver announces the untimely arrival of an unexpected visitor. Leify turns her head in sheer bewilderment, clinging to Oliver as a shadow falls over their peaceful garden sanctuary. Shock violently ripples across her face as she recognizes the unwelcome intruder standing before her. Furious and appalled, Leify demands to know why Prince Easton thinks he can just casually drop by unannounced. Easton boldly steps forward, ignoring her hostility, and expresses gross relief that she is getting along with Lord Oliver. Leify freezes in stunned silence, completely thrown off balance by her former fiancé's sheer audacity. Prince Easton sincerely apologizes to Lady Leify, groaning that he has finally remembered everything just as he wrote in his letter. Leify stares in absolute shock as tears begin to stream down the royal's face. Though her companion points out she planned to forgive him if he cried, she admits she is entirely put off and unsure of what to do now. The tense atmosphere breaks when someone calls out Prince Easton's name. A sharp-eyed man interrupts to ask the prince the true purpose of his visit today. Leify realizes that while the man asks outwardly as the crown prince, his tone carries a full-on, terrifying warning. Flustered, Prince Easton explains that he came to apologize, but actually has more to say. Declaring he has an important matter to discuss, Easton formally requests that they clear the room. Agreeing to listen, the dark-caped man demands to know the identity of the gentleman standing over there. The newcomer introduces himself as Dale Hugh Smith, revealing that His Highness brought him here. Leify's eyes widen as she wonders if this man is connected to the infamous Smith family. A cheerful blonde companion laughs and asks to call him second son, to which Dale politely agrees. Observing him, Leify concludes this must be the prospective fiancé her father mentioned, noting he seems much more of a gentleman than expected. The grand, sunlit library provides a silent backdrop as the group settles into their seats to discuss the grave matters at hand. Taking charge of the room, the caped man announces that he first wants to confirm something crucial. He stares Easton down, asking if the matter regarding his engagement to Leify has been fully settled on his end. Leify breaks a sweat under the crushing pressure of the intense negotiations. Cutting straight to the point, Prince Easton drops the bombshell that House Smith has not given up yet. The caped man's eyes narrow into a deadly glare as he demands clarification. Trembling slightly, Dale Hugh Smith raises his teacup and awkwardly interjects. Sweating under their gazes, Dale makes it absolutely clear that he has no interest in women whatsoever. Leify repeats his revelation in sheer disbelief, trying to process the sudden twist. Her blonde companion smirks playfully, teasing that this development is incredibly lucky for her. A chill runs down her spine as she realizes that if Dale did like women, he might have been brutally dealt with right here. Setting his cup down, Dale insists there is something urgent he must tell them. He warns that while Prince Easton is already taking action against House Smith, a deeper plot is unfolding. The room falls dead silent as Dale reveals that his family is actually targeting the Tarlant sisters. He points out that the true targets of this sinister conspiracy are Leify and Lady Arya. Shock floods Leify's face as she stammers, questioning why she and Arya are caught in the crossfire. Overwhelmed by the escalating danger, she desperately wonders what on earth is happening around them. In a dark flashback, Arya nervously calls out to a mysterious, cloaked man in the woods. The masked man glances back over his shoulder, his cold eyes piercing through the shadows. Arya confesses her anxiety, explaining that Lord Easton suddenly stopped meeting her and questioning if they should leave things as they are. The masked man whips his cape around in a dramatic, intimidating motion. He fiercely commands her never to speak Easton's name when she is with him. Intimidated by his sudden hostility, Arya meekly apologizes. Regaining his composure, the man reassures her that everything has gone exactly as they planned so far. He hands her a wicked plot, instructing her to drug Easton with their tea so he forgets his fiancée and becomes hers upon waking. Submitting to the dark scheme, Arya agrees, telling herself it is merely a moment of weakness. Consumed by envy, Arya recalls how everyone always chose her over her beautiful, clever sister, convincing herself she was naturally entitled to the most love. A bitter memory flashes of Lord Easton dismissing her to go see Leify instead. Arya watches helplessly as Easton's back retreats down the grand hallway, leaving her in the dust. Her frustration boils over as she realizes she had gotten almost everything she wanted, yet Lord Easton still refused to become hers. Desiring her sister's place so incredibly badly, she acknowledges that becoming a prince's fiancé is an incredibly difficult feat. Driven by jealousy, she willingly stained her own hands with terrible wrongdoing to steal that future. Desperate for even more love and a higher status, she reaches out toward the falling petals of ambition. The masked man's seductive promise echoes in her mind, assuring her there is a way to get the thing she wants most. Arya reflects on the sinister pact forged in the shadows of the estate. With a cold, unwavering determination, she fully commits to the treacherous path ahead. Without hesitation, she immediately took the bait and made the sinister plot happen. Staring at the mysterious man's back, a deeply unsettled Arya inwardly admits she still has absolutely no clue who this shadowy figure truly is. Frustration bleeding into her racing thoughts, she desperately wonders why the enigmatic stranger stubbornly refuses to ever reveal his hidden face. Meeting her gaze with cold, calculating eyes above his dark cowl, he chillingly declares that unmasking himself is entirely unnecessary. The cloaked figure dismissively turns his back on the confused girl, projecting an aura of lethal control as tension crackles in the sunlit garden. Suddenly shattering the heavy silence, an authoritative voice rings out, demanding to know if she is indeed Arya Emery Tarlant. Caught completely off guard by the abrupt intrusion, a bewildered Arya defensively pivots and asks for the stranger's identity. Flanked by stoic guards, a sharp-eyed official presents a rolled scroll, formally announcing himself as a royal investigator dispatched directly from the Kingdom of Dystria. Trembling under their intense scrutiny, a panicked Arya nervously begs the investigator to postpone this sudden confrontation while the masked schemer watches silently from the dense bushes. Instantly crushing her desperate plea, the stern official coldly refuses, revealing that he carries an irrefutable writ officially signed by royalty. Pure shock washes over Arya as she stares at the official document bearing Lord Easton's unmistakable signature, frantically questioning what this terrifying ordeal is all about. Delivering a devastating blow, the investigator grimly commands Arya to accompany them, officially declaring her a prime suspect in the attempted assassination of His Highness Prince Easton Diskin. Her reality violently shattered, a horrified Arya gasps at the accusation of assassination, completely unable to process the gravity of the monstrous claim. As a guard aggressively seizes her arm, Arya thrashes wildly against his iron grip, desperately screaming at him to let her go. Tears brimming in her terrified eyes, she forcefully wrenches her body away and violently shrieks her defiance into the wind as her peaceful world officially collapses.